You are listening to Supreme Magus by Legion 20, Chapter 4301 Tower Form, Part 1. Gianni, Orion, Ryla, and Garrick noticed nothing odd when the Verhins disappeared, and life-sized holograms replaced them. Stop right there, or I won't show you my final form. Solus extended her arms, bringing the children to a screeching halt. What final form? Tyrion asked. You have 3 of them just like Auntie Tista and the rest of us. No one in the family had actually awakened their bloodline, but the kids considered it their birthright, and nobody objected to Tyrion's claim. I'm not an abomination like Lith, but I have my tower side, sweetie. Solus ruffled her hair. No offense, Auntie, but what point is there in a tower your size? Lennart looked at her in honest confusion. There isn't enough space for anyone bigger than Elijah. You would be an oversized toy. I said a tower side, not an actual mage tower, Solus sighed. It's easier if I show you. While before Solus had focused on the metal threads of her human life force, and then on the crystal stars of the divine beast, now she turned inward to the energy mass of the tower core that encompassed her whole being. The galaxy of her life force spun faster and faster as the tower core flooded the giant violet star at the center. The crystals studded in the elemental stars spread across their surface, trapping them inside. The metal strands patching the human threads grew in size, until they became thick cables that connected the elemental crystals and guided them in their orbit around the only star left. The energy of the tower core filled the hole in the giant violet first, and then formed multiple concentric layers of runes that wrapped themselves around it. The fire disappeared under the runes, and what was left was the perfect energy sphere of a power core. Around it orbited dozens of intersecting metal rings that served as mana pathways, compressing the power core into a stable form and keeping its energy from dispersing. Each ring carried 7 equally spaced elemental crystals, each one of a different color. The 6 elemental crystals split and absorbed the single components of the world energy before focusing it into the spirit crystal. In turn, the spirit crystals converted the world energy into mana and released it into the power core in the form of emerald beams. The constant flow of mana nourished the other aspects of Solus life force hidden beneath the inorganic matter and nursed them back to health. As Solus life force rearranged itself, her skin went from pink to gold, gaining the luster of polished metal. Her face became a featureless slate with no nose or mouth, only her eyes remained. On the top of her head rested what looked like a 7-pointed crown that resembled the battlements at the top of a tower. A different elemental gemstone was inset on each crenellation, with the spirit crystal placed right above Solus' forehead. A rushing prismatic flame emerged from the crown, forming a cascade of fire that replaced Solus' hair. Diamond-shaped violet crystals protruded from her shoulders, arms, the middle of her chest, hips, and the bridges of her feet. Jagged white crystals replaced her nails and toes instead, and more protruded from her forearms. It was unclear if they were supposed to be weapons or simple decorations. Solus answered the silent question in everyone's eyes by flexing her metal body. Her nails elongated into claws, her toes into talons, and the white crystals on her forearms extended into short blades. She would have been an impressive, majestic figure if she weren't just 1.54 meters, 51, tall, the same as always. Wow, Lith said, going down on one knee to observe Solus' tower form without the flames on her head blinding him. I suppose you are covered in invisible runes like an artifact. Correct, she nodded, her voice silvery like the clinking of the purest crystal. Please, don't ask me what I can do in this form because I have no idea. I'm more interested in the fact you have 2 golden eyes instead of 7, Lith replied. Do you think the gemstones on your crown are what in your other forms become your eyes? That's the same thing I thought when I assumed this form for the first time, she replied. An artifact has no internal organs and no need for a specific arrangement for its sensory organs. If I'm right, my crown allows me to have perfect awareness of my surroundings at all times, since I can look in every direction simultaneously. You can't do it right now? Laren asked as she sniffed Solus and found no human smell. Nope, I can barely see and hear you guys, Solus replied. Whatever senses this form has, they work differently from a human's, and I have yet to understand how to use them. Still, I look pretty cool, right? Very cool. Lilia neared her hand to the flaming hair, pulling it away the moment the heat became unbearable. Is this also part of your tower? I've never seen a furnace floor or anything like that. Good question. Let's ask the expert, Mom. There is no furnace floor in the tower, sweetie. Menadian shook her head. Or at least, there wasn't when I designed and built it. I used the magma from the crucible to smelt magical metals, and the origin flames I bought to purify them. Natural and magical fire are useless to a Forgemaster. Either you have developed a new floor on your own to incorporate in the tower the effects of your divine beast blood, or this is just a manifestation of your bloodline abilities. Whatever it is, it'd better be a product of your phoenix aspect, Featherling. Salark tapped her foot in annoyance. I'm very disappointed in you. Why, Grandma? Solus felt hurt by those words. Is it because I'm a midget? What? No, the Overlord was flabbergasted. Who cares about that? I was referring to the fact that you turned into a dragon, have little feathers, no beak, and no bird traits. What did I do to you to deserve such treatment? Why is it that, aside from Tista, no one shows me some love? You all seem to favor this cold-hearted brute. She pointed at Ligon, who for once didn't know what to say. It's not my fault, Grandma. Solus scratched her head in embarrassment, discovering that she felt nothing and that her flames didn't hurt her. I'm bonded to Lith, and his dragon side is dominant. The tower must have followed his same proportions in rebuilding my body. In other words, this is Rifa's fault, Salark nodded. First, this argument is stupid, Menadian said. Second, back then, my only priority was saving Effie's life, not preening your feathers. I barely knew what I was doing, and I'm surprised as you are at what happened to my daughter. I'm dropping this for now, but not because this is over. The Overlord snorted. I'm running out of ideas about what to make your holograms say. If we stay here for too long, I could slip up, and someone could notice there is something wrong with you. A quick mind link brought everyone up to speed about what the holograms had done, and said with their friends. Chapter 4302 Tower Form, Part 2. Salark then gave them a few seconds to follow the conversations taking place inside the mansion, so that when she brought everyone back, they acted natural. Come on, guys, your names for soulless dragon form are way lamer than usual, Garrick said, stinging the Overlord in her pride. Is Snow White Dragon really the best you can do? Of course not. Aaron was offended by both the allegation and the fact that Salark had uttered such an uncool name on his behalf. I was just joking. What about Frostblade Dragon? Much better. Garrick nodded in approval, yet Solus cringed. You focus on her joints and forget about the most important part, Lyria interjected. Auntie's majestic, colorful wings. Prismatic Dragon is a much more fitting name for her. The girls nodded, the boys retched, and Solus cringed harder. That's even lamer than everything you proposed so far, Lyria, Garrick pointed out, forcing Salark to leave before she joined that ridiculous conversation to defend her taste in names. That's not a cool name, it's too girly. Auntie Solus is a girl, you numbnut, she replied. Tell him, Auntie. Lyria is right, I'm a girl, Solus gave a non-committal answer. I'm sorry, guys, but all that shape-shifting tired me out, and I have to go now. I promised Ryla to take remedial lessons so that I won't slow everyone else down the next time we practice together. It was the first time Ryla heard of any such thing, but she knew how bad a kid's quarrel could get, and how awkward being dragged into it could become. Solus is right, kids. See you later. The farmer acted as if it were the program all along and walked away with Solus. Thanks for the save, she sighed. I don't want to offend anyone, but those names were just bad. At least they just wanted to give you a name, Ryla sighed harder. They want to find me a husband. They argue about which bachelor is better to set me up with, and not once did they ask my opinion. Space. Solus sought shelter in the nursery and showed her new forms to the babies. Unlike their slightly older relatives, the babies stared at her with their mouths open and showered her with enthusiastic baby babble of praise. Thanks, guys, Solus sniffled. You're the best. Much to her dismay, her tower form got the lion's share of the attention. With its golden skin and many precious gemstones, it sparkled like a giant toy that the babies couldn't wait to bite and examine. Much to the babies' dismay, Solus kept them at arm's length and allowed them to examine her only one at a time. I'm sorry, but I have no control over this stupid flaming hair, she tried to explain. I can neither turn it off nor make it go cold, and I'm not going to let you get hurt because of me. Luckily for her, the babies lost most of their interest when they realized how hard her skin was, and that the shiny gems couldn't be taken off. The second most appreciated form was the dragon. It was less gleaming, but it was pleasantly warm to the touch, and Solus let the babies come at her together. On top of that, Elijah, Valoran, and Raldorak loved expressing themselves via the dragon scales. They shapeshifted into their divine beast forms, running up and down Solus' body while challenging her to catch them. Surin and the others, instead, went for the horns. It turned out that after covering them with a blanket, they were a great place to take a nap. The Indech form, instead, was met with a complete lack of interest. "Why don't you like it?" Solus asked. "Don't you think I'm tall and beautiful now?" "You're always tall and beautiful, Mom," Valoran said, and the other toddlers nodded. "Thanks, kids," she sniffled, enveloping them in a group hug with her wings. "I love you so much. You're so smelly that I wait a second." After changing several diapers and feeding the hungry horde, Solus felt confident enough to return to the tower and ask Lith to join her as soon as he could. He arrived a few minutes later and found Solus practicing with her origin flames on a few ingots of orichalcum ore. "I realize that now that I can use origin flames, I need remedial lessons from you as well," she said. "I have every word of Voltak's teachings recorded in the eyes, but listening and doing are worlds apart. Even worse, only fire dragons can use primal spark, and without it I can't practice for long. I need all the guidance you can give me. I'm fine with teaching you how to purify metals, Solus, but I'd rather you leave that to me. Also, I don't think you should use origin flames outside of emergencies." Lith sat at a safe distance from her, which, along with his stern expression, doused her enthusiasm. "And why is that?" Solus sensed his worry about her condition through their bond. "Because your life force is much more messed up than my own," Lith replied. "You've seen how deep your cracks still are, and you even have a huge hole at the core of your very being. If not for the tower core holding your life force together, you'd still be stuck in your energy form. And origin flames consume a spark of life force." Solus felt stupid for not considering it on her own. "Primordial flames consume much more than that, and immortal flames take a lot out even of a healthy dragon. Not to mention that they can be turned against you," he pointed out. "Unlike your mana, all kinds of mystical flames you might be able to conjure can hurt their user. All it takes is a well-placed dimensional spell." "Can you at least teach me how to conjure cursed flames?" she asked. "They don't consume more life force than origin flames, and with my 7 eyes I should be able to use them. I promise I will keep them for emergencies only." "Only if you also promise me to leave dread flames alone," Lith replied. "I'm aware of Tista's attempts at it, and I'm not comfortable with that either. Dread flames put a huge burden on the user and possess unmatched destructive power. Tista is an adult, and I can't force her to listen to me. If she's willing to risk getting seriously hurt or worse, I can't stop her. Yet the consequences for you would be much worse, Solus. One mistake and you could lose your body, burn down part of the tower, or hurt me. We are bonded, but while my mistakes only indirectly affect you and the others, yours affect me directly." Those words evoked the images of Solus losing control over the silvery flames, hurting her and Lith at the worst possible moment. Yet while she had the bleed to shield most of her life force, Lith would take the brunt of the damage. She could see the babies crying at their father's coffin, hear them ask her why he was gone, and Solus had been reduced to a wisp of light. Even in her imagination, Solus didn't know what to say without feeling like the most foolish person on Magur. Chapter 4303 No Going Back, Part 1. Solus' eagerness to learn how to conjure origin and cursed flames disappeared like a snowball in the sun, and the burst of violet fire she was about to breathe out died in her throat. "I promise." Solus threw her arms around Lith's neck, checking that he was all right to dispel the lucid nightmare that still haunted her vision. "I don't care about purifying metals anymore. Just teach me enough not to hurt you when we fight together." "You've gone from one extreme to the other," he smiled as he gently caressed her head. "The theory behind making origin flames phase through your body and purifying metals is the same. As long as you don't practice too much, you'll be fine. Cursed flames aren't a problem either. If you are a full-fledged demon like I think you are, sooner or later, you're going to use most kinds of flames out of survival instinct." Tista almost froze herself to death when that happened. "I'd rather you know what you are doing and kick some ass than bet everything on dumb luck. Just promise me that you won't be a Lith and will train responsibly." "I'll do more than promise," she nodded. "Mom, come out. I know you've been listening to us the whole time." "I don't know what you're talking about." Menadian appeared with a book in one hand and a glass of water in the other. "Nice try, Mom," Solus snorted. "Too bad that your copy of our void magic grimoire is upside down, and as a demon you have no need to drink water. Are you opposed to me learning how to use origin flames as well, or is spying on us your new hobby?" Menadian looked at the book and realized that Solus was right. Lith's and Solus grimoires had no titles for security reasons, and only a small arrow along their spine marked which side was up. The first ruler of the flames had opened the book in haste for her cover story, failing to realize she had grabbed it the wrong way. This is one of those moments I regret keeping my extra eyes closed out of habit, she sighed. Yes, Solus, I agree with Lith on how you should use your origin flames. A few breaths here and there in battle are okay. Prolonged training and mass purification of enchanted metals instead could compromise your recovery. Don't get me started on dread flames, or I could go on all day. Don't worry, Mom, I agree with you too, Solus replied. I'll keep my training to a minimum, just enough not to injure myself or others in a chaotic situation. On top of that, I'm not a total beginner. I helped Lith practice his control over origin flames both alone and under Fallow's guidance. The problem is that without someone who can use Primal Spark, putting all that theory into practice will require quite some time. About that, why don't you just ask Urgek for help? Menadian asked. You are in a friendly relationship with the fire dragons, and their bloodline ability would save you a lot of time and risks. Because we need the focus of the council to be on our blade weapons, Mom, not on me, Solus said. If we reveal the news of my evolution to Urgek, he'll start planning for a way to approach me like he already did for Lith, Tista, and the kids. He's the patriarch, so he'll ask for the clan elders' advice, who in turn will discuss potential strategies with their assistants. One slip-up and the entire Fire Dragon clan will know. At that point, it's only a matter of time before the news leaks out. And that's not the worst part, Lith said. Voltek used the dragon scales along with mind links to explain complex concepts to Tista and me. Then, during the training, he had to check our life forces to ensure we weren't hurting ourselves. If Urgek trains Solus like Voltek did for me, he'll find out about her tower half, and from there things will get messy. This time we are on our own, Rifa. Which is why I want you to monitor me with the eyes whenever I practice with Origin Flames, Mom, Solus concluded. The moment it detects any form of strain on me or the tower, I want you to stop me. Lith and I are stubborn, and we can get so engrossed in our work that we might throw caution to the wind. You are no different, but when it comes to me, you are an obsessive, nagging control freak. I trust you to protect me from myself, Mom. I've never been insulted so much by someone who's trying to compliment me, Menadian snorted. Anyway, I'm your woman, Solus. When do you want to start? Solus performed a deep scan of her life force with the infirmary before answering. According to the tower, she was in perfect shape. Right now. Space. The following morning, everyone was still wondering about what Solus' tower form could do, while the kids kept coming up with high-sounding, braggadocious names for her dragon aspect that she rejected one after another. Lith, instead, had a stern expression since the moment he entered the living room and joined the rest of the family for breakfast. Is everything all right with Lucia, son? Roz couldn't help but worry that more awakened had come hunting for the Verhens in the hope of unveiling the secret of human evolution, and innocent people had gotten hurt because of it. Lucia is fine, Dad, and so is the rest of the kingdom. You've got nothing to worry about, Lith replied. Then why the long face, dear? Alina asked. Lennart had finally found his smile again. It was shy and never lasted long, but Miadin's presence uplifted the boy's mood. Bike had already licked his bowl clean and was now at Lennart's feet, begging on his belly for more food like an oversized dog. Whenever the boy gave something from the table to Miadin, the bike licked Lennart's hand first and then his face, tickling him. Because yesterday you gave me your answer about awakening, Mom, and I have waited until now before saying anything because I wanted to give you the time to reconsider your decision while you still can, Lith said as he ate his bacon. Are you sure you want to awaken? Think about it carefully before answering because I won't ask you again. Alina took a deep breath, knowing that once she crossed that threshold, there would be no going back, and her life would never be the same. She placed her hand over Roz's and held it to find her strength. Yes, I'm sure, dear, Alina nodded. Me too, Roz said without hesitation. Renaa and Senton needed a few more seconds, but their answer was the same. Then there is no point in delaying any longer, Lith said. I'll bring you to my secret awakening spot as soon as we are done with breakfast. Can we come too, Uncle Lith? Lennart asked, and his siblings nodded. We'll be quiet as a mouse, we swear. Yeah, right, Senton snorted. So that you can be in your uncle's secret spot and listen to his instructions as he awakens us, and what would stop you from awakening as well. Chapter 4304 No Going Back Part 2. Lennart didn't expect that anyone would catch on to his brilliant plan, so he had prepared no plausible excuse. It was worth a try, Falco patted his back. Well played, Turion sighed. Lith's offer caught everyone by surprise, and the stomachs of his soon-to-be apprentices churned in nervousness, ruining their appetite. When the meal was over and Lith warped them to the tower, they felt akin to death sentence inmates waiting for the execution. "What is this place, son?" Roz had never seen such a room in the tower. It was small, circular, and empty. There was no window or openings aside from the entrance, making the room look like a prison. Roz wasn't the only one who sighed in relief when he looked around and found no chamber pots or cots for the night. "I've remodeled a small section of the dream house," Lith replied. "It's one of the few floors with no defined shape and at the perfect height to awaken people like you. The raw world energy in the lower floors is too strong, while it's too thin in the upper floors." "Please sit down in the middle and form a circle," he said, and they did as bidden. "Tista, Indech, form with me. Solus, use the hands of Menadian to adjust the world energy density, but also use this opportunity to experience our Indech powers and try to imitate us." Lith, Tista, and Solus shapeshifted into their Indech form and assumed a triangle formation. Yet while Lith and Tista used swirling wind to conjure more world energy, Solus used the hands to keep up with them, and the eyes of Menadian to study how the Indech wings were supposed to interact with the world energy. "I feel something pressing all over my skin, lil bro. It's like the heat released by an invisible fire. Is this normal?" Rena asked. "Yes, you are currently exposed to a density of world energy several times superior to that of the mana geyser beneath the mansion," Lith replied. "I want you guys to focus on that feeling. Try to follow the world energy as it enters your bodies and find your mana cores. Once you do, I want you to inform me, and I'll explain the next step to you." "What about the breathing technique?" Senton asked. "Aren't we supposed to use it to awaken?" "I'm already giving you guys the perfect environment for awakening. The breathing technique would make things too easy. I'm checking on your innate talent and mana perception. Now shut up and follow my instructions," Lith said. "If they manage to self-awaken, it would be ideal. Next comes feeling their cores without my help. Needing both the perfect environment and the breathing technique is the bottom of the barrel," he also said via a mind link. "That's mean, Lith," Tista said. "You can't expect so much from them. They have no magical practice worth mentioning." "It's not." Solus shook her head as she tried to feel the world energy with her wings. "Lith said it's a test of talent. It has nothing to do with practice. We can use it to gauge how much guidance each one of them needs." Alina and the others knew the theory behind awakening, but aside from the hair on their necks bristling, there was no reaction. They took deep breaths and exhaled slowly, imitating what they had seen Lith do countless times to the best of their abilities. Yet only one of them succeeded. Roz had already experienced something similar, yet this time the world around him wasn't dark. It was as bright as day, and the only darkness he could sense was the one of his own body and those of the other non-awakened. Even with his eyes closed, Roz was surrounded by a white light and 3 sets of flaming wings. 2 of them burned with prismatic fire, while the third set was barely a flickering outline in the background. "Let me guess, those are Lith and Tista, while the weak one is Solus," Roz thought. "Maybe my mana core is no different from her wings. They are both hard to notice due to their weakened state." He focused on the void of his body, searching for a spark of light until he found a tiny, dull orange flame right above his navel. The darkness surrounding it was so deep, and the flame so faint, that one moment of distraction was enough to lose sight of it. "I've found my mana core. I've tried the breathing thing multiple times, but nothing works," Roz said, sweating profusely from the effort. "What's next?" "Anyone else?" Lith asked, a bit surprised by his father's success and a bit disappointed that Roz had stumbled right in front of the finishing line. Several minutes had already passed since the beginning of the exercise, yet no one had achieved the slightest hint of mana flow that the eyes of Menadian could detect. "No, I'm sorry," Rena said, and Alina and Senton nodded. "Then start breathing according to this rhythm. Inhale," a silvery knell resounded. "And exhale," a dull chime accompanied the command. "Gods, I'm so stupid." Upon the second breath, Roz saw the orange flame burn brighter. "I shouldn't have breathed at random. I should have followed the rhythm of my mana core." He noticed that Lith's breathing rhythm was slightly off from that of his natural mana flow, so Roz disregarded the bell. He breathed in as long as his mana core burned bright and breathed out as soon as its light started to flicker. Before Alina and the others could notice the growing flame of their mana cores, Roz developed a mana flow, and an orange light replaced the darkness of his body. "Congratulations, Dad." Lith touched his father's shoulder to activate a mind link. You have awakened first and learned the breathing technique called accumulation. Keep practicing in silence, please. Don't disturb the others. This is not a competition, but no one likes feeling like a loser. Thanks, son, but I'm not as talented as you think. Roz perceived Alina, Renaa, and Senton as three pitch-black outlines and knew they were nowhere close to awakening. You've already taught me how to sense and follow my mana during our fishing trip. I had an unfair advantage over the others. Lith was flabbergasted by both his father still remembering a single magic lesson he had received months ago and how much it had helped Ra's awakening. Don't be too humble, Dad, Lith replied as Solus, and Tista congratulated Roz as well. It's still an impressive achievement. I can see my mana core. Alina was next. Her bright orange mana core was weaker than Renaa's dull yellow, but she had over a decade of magical experience on her daughter. What am I supposed to do now? Keep following the breathing rhythm, Mom, Lith said, hoping she would grasp the final piece of the puzzle on her own like Roz. You'll awaken once your mana flow grows intense enough. The same will happen for everybody else. Me too, Renaa said the moment she caught a lick of yellow fire lighting the darkness. Can one have no talent for awakening? Senton asked in embarrassment. You have a red core, Solus replied. I bet you've never used chore magic to do more than light a candle. You are not used to feeling the world energy clearly, correct? Chapter 4305 Final Word, Part 1. Correct, Senton had just replied to Solus when he noticed a red spark. The pitch-black darkness of his body made even the faintest light shine like a sun. Renaa's core, instead, was already powerful, and she didn't notice anything until its radiance grew significantly stronger. It took Alina a few minutes to realize that the rhythm marked by the bell was 2 beats slower than her core's. Once she did, she immediately adjusted her breathing technique and managed to awaken, breaking through the bright orange and achieving the dull yellow. Thanks to Lith's regular rejuvenation treatments, she painlessly released a few impurities that the tower cleansed before their stench could stink up the air. Renaa needed even longer, while Senton failed to understand the significance of what he was doing. My mana core has been burning bright for a while now, but nothing happens, he said. What am I doing wrong? Your mana core has its own unique rhythm, Tista said. Breathing in sync to the sound of the bell stimulates your core, but it's not enough to awaken. You need to tweak your breathing rhythm until it matches your mana flow. Thank you. A minute later, Senton awakened as well. Going from red to bright red produced almost no changes in his body, and he expelled no impurities. What you've learned now is called accumulation. Renaa and Alina already knew it, but Lith said it out loud not to make Senton realize that he had finished last by a wide margin. Practice it until it becomes second nature to you. Roz was already familiar with his breathing technique, but he enjoyed the feeling of his mana core growing stronger with each breath he took. A few minutes later, Lith taught them invigoration. Once they mastered it as well, he dispelled the extra-world energy and allowed his students to open their eyes. That's it, Senton asked. I don't feel any different. Because you are not, Lith shook his head. At this level of body refinement, there are only a few differences with a regular human. I'll now teach you how to use your new abilities one by one. Lith warped everyone in the firing range and explained life vision, fire vision, fusion magic, and spirit magic to them. Good gods, Roz made the mistake of using life vision to observe his son, and the magical aura shrouding Lith blinded him. You shine like a sun, son. Then you'd better not look at Solus, Dad, he replied. With her tower active, she has the combined mana flow of her violet core and the tower core. Which is why I always wear cloaking rings, she sighed, slipping them on her fingers. I finally have fire vision, Renaa roared in triumph. I won't be the worst cook in the family anymore. I have fire vision too, sweetie, Alina chuckled. I know, but at least now it's a fair competition, Renaa grunted. Lith always cheated before. I never denied it, Lith shrugged. Now stop looking at each other and look at yourself. Life and fire vision require no training. You either use them or you don't. Fusion and spirit magic, however, are different. Everyone was enthusiastic about fusion magic until they tried it out. This is nothing compared to the potions, Senton said. Even though I'm using air and fire fusion, I'm as slow as paint drying and my strength barely improved. Again, your body refining is still in the early stages, Lith replied. You'll rely on the potions and complement them with fusion magic for a long time. I just wanted you to understand your current abilities and limits. Sit down, please. To employ your newfound powers properly, you first need to understand how they work. We can split the 6 base elements into 3 branches. Light and earth are the elements of creation. He gave them a brief introduction to his theory about magic, before having them practice the elements of balance, air and water. Remember what I've told you, conjuring water and wind is easy. The real hurdle is creating and controlling mist, ice, air blades, and lightning. Choose one element and practice it until you run out of mana. Then use invigoration and get back to work until I tell you otherwise. Begin. Lith marked them all as apprentices in the tower mainframe, granting them partial access to the tower core. Without the extra flow of world energy nurturing their bodies, Senton would have lasted seconds before needing to use invigoration and Ra's minutes. Elena and Renaa had more mana, but powerful beginners like them tended to make up for their poor technique with raw strength and wouldn't last much longer. The firing range prevented accidents, neutralizing any wild spell before someone could get hurt. Much to everyone's surprise, Ra's was as quick a study as Elena, sometimes even faster. "Good gods, dear," she said in amazement. "You awakened first and now this. It seems we finally know where our children inherited their talent for magic. I'm so proud of you." Upon awakening, everyone had noticed who had already awakened and who hadn't. Elena knew to have awakened second, just like Senton knew to be the last. "Thanks, but I'm actually a cheat." Raz scratched his head in embarrassment. "Lith taught me how to feel and control my mana flow during our second trip to Jamble, remember?" "The fishing trip," she nodded, "and you made it this far with just one lesson." "I had a lot of fun, so it was hard to forget." Raz shrugged. "Can I share what I learned back then with the others?" "No, Dad," Solus shook her head. "Words are pointless and you don't know how to form mind links yet. Besides, you've reached enlightenment that day. Don't rob them of the opportunity to do the same." Senton felt a bit envious of Raz, but after checking how weak he was compared to the others, he felt no shame in his struggles. "I don't come from a magical bloodline and have never practiced magic," he thought. "I can't gauge how talented I am until I grow strong enough to compare my powers with the Verhins." Lith interrupted Senton's practice first, when invigoration replenished only half of his mana. Then it was Raz's turn, Elena's, and finally Renaa's. "This is Silverwing's book, The Basics of Magic." He handed them a copy each. "You have to read it on your own time when you are free or are resting. Don't ask me for advice until you've given your all yet can't find a solution on your own." "I told you I don't want to become a mage or a warrior," Senton panted, and Renaa nodded. "You still need to practice a breathing technique or you'll age. If you don't temper your body instead, you won't be able to withstand the breakthroughs," Lith replied. "Also, you don't need to stop working in your shop to practice magic. You can heat the metals with fire magic and temper them with water magic. You can remove the external impurities in an ore batch with earth magic. You can use fusion magic to support your crafting techniques, Senton. There are countless ways to apply magic in your daily life. Finding those who suit you best is also a form of training. The same applies to the rest of you. Renaa, you can use magic to cook, fix your yard, or help Dad till and water his fields. The only thing you shouldn't do with magic unless it's an emergency is carrying and lifting heavy weights." Chapter 4306 Final Word, Part 2. "Why," Renaa was flabbergasted, "if Senton and I have to practice so much, what's the difference with Mom and Dad?" "Because you already have a yellow core, sis," Tista replied. "The breakthrough to the green will be very painful unless you fortify your body properly. You might even die if it happens away from the tower." "Tista is right, Renaa," Solus said. "To withstand your breakthroughs and handle powerful spells, your mana core and body must develop at the same rate. As for your second question, Mom and Dad have decided to take the path to become mages," Lith said. "They will study and train until they reach the bright blue in a few years, and then I'll teach them the secret of the violet core. You two, instead, just want to be awakened, but I recommend reaching at least a deep green core. That's the threshold that separates a mage from a magico/A and marks the minimum mana capacity to use dimensional magic. After that, as long as you don't use accumulation, your mana core will stop developing, and you won't face any more breakthroughs. You can go back to your old lives with all the perks of being an awakened mage. The deep green might be around the corner for Renaa, but I'm barely at the bright red," Senton pointed out. "How long will it take me to reach that level?" "Well, you already are an adult, and working as a blacksmith gave you a strong physique. You'll get to the orange before you know it, and reaching the yellow should be a matter of a few months at worst," Tista pondered. "How fast you get to the deep green depends on how hard you train and how much time you put into it, but no one expects you to make magic your full-time job." Just practice every day by applying it to the smith works as Lith suggested. The reason you are here is that once you awaken, there are a few things you must learn to control if you don't want to be a threat to others, like spirit magic. What do you mean? Roz asked, and Lith took out steaming plates of hot food and cold beer. Everyone was hungry from the training, so they released tendrils of spirit magic that snatched the food and drinks and shoved them in their faces. Senton's plate shook visibly, but his core lacked the strength to do more. That's what she means, Lith replied. If you don't learn how to control your spirit magic, it will grab what you want, hit those who annoy you, and destroy every fragile object near you when you are angry or upset. He handed Senton his plate and mug, and he gratefully accepted them. This concludes your training session for today, Lith said. You all had a breakthrough, and your bodies need time to adapt. From tomorrow, I'll entrust you to Kami and Celia. Aaron and Lyria will step in only if necessary. They'll take care of teaching you the basics of spirit magic and checking on your progress on chore magic. Once you have learned to control your abilities, there will be no more mandatory lessons. Remember that you chose to awaken. No one will force you to read Silverwing's book, exercise, or practice magic. How far you get and how fast you get there depends on you. If there is anything you don't understand or you have a problem, my door is always open. Spoken like a true academy professor, Alina giggled. Thanks, sweetie. I have a final word of advice, please. Solus shape-shifted into her human form, wringing her hands. I know that magic books can be boring and physical exercise is a hassle, but don't slack off every time life gives you an excuse to do it. It's how I lost my father. My dad loved me with all his heart, to the point that he didn't take care of himself because he preferred spending time with me. Don't make his same mistake. I couldn't live with myself knowing I'm the reason more children lost their parents. Solus warped away to her room, bursting into tears only when Menadian was already there to console her. Solus hated using her father's death as a cautionary tale, but she'd rather reopen her wounds a bit than let her new family go through the pain she and her mother had endured. Senton and the others exchanged worried looks, knowing how Thrane's death had changed the fate of Menadian and Solus for the worse. Thrane was a good man, a great husband, and a loving father by all accounts. Yet he had taken the risks that being an awakened carried lightly, causing his own demise and destroying his family. Please thank Solus for me and tell her that I've taken her advice to heart. Roz clenched his hands. No matter how much I hate studying, I won't do anything stupid that might endanger my life. Same, suddenly, Renaa felt like lifting weights until her arms gave out. You can do it yourself once she returns, Lith replied. By the way, I'm activating the lodestar. I'll use it tomorrow to experiment with the stable cursed elements. The tower will be unavailable for the next 48 hours unless there is an emergency. About that, we have a small emergency, Alina said after checking her pocket watch. We've been holed up in here for hours and no one prepared lunch. What will we eat now? Space. Luckily for the hungry Verhins, after not seeing or hearing from them for a while, Gianni had stepped in. Quilla, we have to prepare a lot of food, so we're going to need all the help we can get. Call Celia and Aaron. Nalrond, here's the menu and a list of the ingredients we need. Check the pantry. If we have everything, you can start preparing the broth. Otherwise, I need you to make a grocery run. Freya, you start peeling and cutting the vegetables, she said. Why can he help with the cooking while I'm relegated to busboy duty? Freya snorted. Because I tasted your cooking, and it was awful, Gianni replied as a wave of her hand brought pots and pans onto the stove. I'm sorry, sweetie, but I don't have the time to teach you, fix your mistakes, or coddle your ego. Thanks, Mom, Freya grunted but did as instructed. Under Gianni's leadership, the Urnas and the Fasteros prepared a small feast ready to be served when the Verhins arrived. Thanks for taking care of lunch, Gianni, Alina said. I underestimated the effort that awakening would require and didn't expect our first lesson to last this long. She glossed over the long shower everyone had taken to remove the stench of sweat from their relentless practice. Don't mention it, Gianni nodded politely in reply. Whenever you need a hand, all you need to do is ask. Are you really awakened now? Falco asked. Can you show us? Aaron could have used life vision to check on his parents' awakening, but he was too excited to think about it. Sure, Senton scratched his head. Don't laugh, okay? That request made no sense until the four new awakened released their aura. Alina and Renaa shone with yellow light, Roz's orange was much weaker, and Senton's bright red was barely visible. Chapter 4307 Talos, Part 1. So cool, the kids said in unison before running to cheer on their respective parents. "Are you okay, Mom? Was awakening painful?" "I'm as good as new, kids." Renaa hugged them in turns. "You have nothing to worry about. At our level, awakening only stung a bit." "Don't be too hard on yourself, Senton." Celia patted his shoulder. "When Ryman awakened me, I went from the deepest of red to barely red. I could use chore magic for almost 10 seconds before wheezing like a bellows, yet here I am today." The huntress released a strong green aura and conjured the loop spell. "If even someone disliked by mana like me can grow this strong and learn dimensional magic, you can do it too." Truth be told, while Lith and the others had needed only a few lessons from Professor Rudd to complete the exercise spells and a few weeks to open their first warp steps, Celia had needed months to master the loop spell. She had little talent for magic and even less dimensional awareness, but constant practice and the lessons she received from Protector, and now Freya allowed her to make slow but steady progress. "How was Uncle Lith's lesson?" Tyrion asked. "Is awakening difficult?" Lennart added. "Can you shoot fireballs, Mom?" Falco mimicked an explosion with his hands. "It was interesting," Renaa would have replied with boring if Solus' warning wasn't still ringing in her ears. "Awakening wasn't easy, kids, but Grandpa Roz beat us all to it." "Really?" The children turned to look at Roz in admiration. "Are you that talented, Grandpa?" "Of course he is," Aaron replied. "He is my dad." It was nothing much. Roz wasn't used to receiving so much attention and laughed nervously. "Lith is an excellent teacher, and everyone awakened almost at the same time." "What about the fireballs, Mom?" Roz's answer disappointed the triplets, who went back to focusing on their parents. "If you call this a fireball, then yes." Renaa conjured a sphere of fire the size of an apple, making the kids groan at the bad joke. The barrage of questions continued, asking the new awakened how strong they had become and what the most powerful spell they could use was. "Guys, it was one lesson." Lith raised an eyebrow. "Your parents never practiced anything beyond chore magic their whole lives. You can't expect them to go straight to conjuring fireballs and maybe opening steps. That kind of spell takes years of study." "I can confirm." Camilla nodded while emitting a bright green aura. "Even with the best teachers and lots of free time, I have yet to learn how to blink." "It's perfectly normal, Kami," Freya said. "Dimensional magic is a complex discipline, and with a core like yours, you can't use raw power to make up for any mistake you make. Mastering warp steps is already a great result. Blinking is considered the final test for a mage because it requires flawless tetracasting and perfect control over the elements." At the end of the meal, after Gianni and Orion returned to their quarters, Lith announced his intentions to his friends and family. "I've activated the lodestar, so no one can access the tower for the next 48 hours. I'll be gone from tomorrow afternoon until the evening of the following day. Baba Yaga, Elijah, and I will work on the cursed runes. Please find a plausible excuse with the others, and make sure your versions of the story match. I can use cursed flames, so maybe I can learn mirror magic too," Tista said. "Can I spectate on your experiments?" "No," Lith shook his head. "The lodestar can't host everyone, and allowing you to come would be unfair to the others. Moreover, you don't have cursed elements in your life force. Mirror magic is highly dangerous to Baba Yaga and me, but to you, it's deadly. You can't help us, and anything you might learn would endanger your life." It was worth a shot. Tista was aware she had never heard the cursed runes on her own, and cold shivers ran down her spine when others used mirror magic in her presence. Yet seeing her beloved brother go where she couldn't follow him hurt Tista deeply. It made her feel as if they were growing apart, and she was disappointing him. It was the reason she was so determined to learn how to conjure the dread flames. "I'll go with them, but only because I want to test the new floor of the tower and help them with the eyes. While Malishka and Lith focus on mirror magic, I'll take care of Elijah and review the data to check if there's anything they missed." "I'm not comfortable with Ely learning advanced mirror magic," Camilla said. "If she gets scared or bored, bring her back home, okay?" "Okay," Solus nodded. Space. The following day, Lith and Solus claimed to have to test new forge-mastering techniques for blade weapons, and left as soon as the lodestar was fully charged. They found Bloodhaven waiting for them in the mansion's keep, right next to Starforge. "Thanks for the call." Baba Yaga was in her maiden form. "I had given up on learning mirror magic millennia ago, and being wrong for once is a pleasant experience." She looked at the tower's renewed appearance, assessing how many floors it had regained by its increased height. 2 floors above and 2 below like usual, right?" she asked, and Lith nodded. "What about you, Solus? Have you discovered new aspects of your life force now that it has stabilized? I have 3 more, Solus replied. I have yet to find a name for them, so it's easier if I show you. She shapeshifted into an Indech, then into her dragon form, and last into her tower form. Interesting. The maiden examined the 3 aspects one by one. It appears that part of the tower is deeply intertwined with your life force, since none of your other forms can survive without it. Do you think I'm going to heal upon reaching the bright violet, or will I remain like this forever? Solus asked. I didn't expect you to become a divine beast in the first place, so I have no clue about what you might become next either. Baba Yaga shrugged. All I can offer you is a name for your tower form. Back when I was researching how to fuse a living being with an artifact, I created a prototype called Talos. My current horsemen are based on it, and Rifa and I used it as a starting point for the procedure that saved your life. In the end, we scrapped it for parts, but I would be honored if you carried on its name. Talos, Solus pondered. I like it, it has a nice ring. Thank you, the maiden giggled. By the way, you have no idea how happy I am that you finally recovered the thinking room, the lodestar. Every attempt I made to discover new runes failed, and I've been clutching at straws for days. Even with my white core, the cursed elements instill enough fear in me to keep me from establishing a connection with the violent side of the world energy. She sighed. You are in good company, Malishka, Solus replied. Only undead and abominations seem to be able to learn mirror magic, and not even they are safe from it. Chapter 4308 Talos, Part 2. By the way, mirror magic is the name of the branch of magic that employs the unstable cursed runes. Baba Yaga said. You can only conjure them in pairs, as if each spell came with its own twisted reflection. The stable runes, instead, allow us to conjure a single cursed element in relative safety. We need to find a suitable name for it. I don't know, Lith pondered. A name would make it recognizable, and this is the second branch of magic I discover. To make matters worse, only I and a few other people on the entire Magur can use it. If someone so much as hears about it, it will stir up a lot of trouble. We'll think about the name on another occasion, Solus chimed in. Now focus, please. We have only so much time in the lodestar, and once we begin, there is no stopping the clock. They had to walk to the underground floor due to the lack of world energy for the warp mirror. Before we start, make sure the veil is deactivated as well, Lith, Baba Yaga said. If you hide the runes you discover from me, there is no point in my presence. Lith nodded and deactivated the cloaking field. I also have one thing to do before we start, Solus said. Don't worry, it will just take a minute. She shapeshifted into her Indech form and activated the lodestar. The enormous amount of world energy stored inside the runes that covered the floor, walls, and ceiling of the lodestar was released at once, flooding the circular room and its occupants. Solus had only a feeble grasp on how to control her wings, yet with such a thick world energy, she only needed to create a tiny opening to bring down the dam of her atrophied mana organs. Solus' pristine wings absorbed but a fraction of the energy of the lodestar, yet it was enough to make them flare up with the radiance of a small sun. She gritted her teeth, feeling the power of the elements coursing through invisible, obstructed channels. The silver and gold veins across her body lit up, and then her wings split into 6. Flesh and bones turned into energy, and each wing became an elemental jet of fire of a different color. Stop immediately, Lith said as the metal veins on Solus' Indech form shone even brighter, revealing a complex network running parallel to her blood circulatory system. Your body can't withstand that much energy yet. The light went out as fast as it appeared as Solus reverted to her human form. I know, silly, but thanks for your concern, she said. I only meant to see if the lodestar could help us master our Indech form as well. I was supposed to revert immediately, but I didn't expect the process to be so painful. The answer is no. The lodestar can indeed help us activate our atrophied mana organs and stimulate our wings, but the concentration of world energy in higher is too high. Atrophied organs are akin to impurities. They aren't something that just limits our potential. They also protect us from a power we can't handle at our current level. I'm glad you carefully planned this, Solus, but you gave us a huge scare and your minute is over. The maiden glared at her friend. Let's get to work, Lith. About that, how are we supposed to start? He asked. I had no better luck with my experiments. I'm still stuck with a few zero spells and the chore magic runes for 4 stable cursed elements. Then we'll start from that, Baba Yaga nodded. Since we already made some progress with 0, we'll keep it for last. Pick another cursed element and speak its magic word. Lith nodded, tracing a circle in the air, and then crossing it vertically with his index and middle finger. Ekrasu! A small bullet of chaos energy erupted from the rune, and it would have damaged the wall if not for the firing range neutralizing it. I didn't feel anything, no new runes, nothing, Lith said. What about you, Ely? The baby girl clapped at her father's awesome performance, but when asked the same question again with dragon scales, she had no idea what he was talking about. This is no different from when we practiced the stable cursed runes in the desert. Lith shook his head. Is the lodestar broken, or am I doing something wrong? The lodestar is at full capacity and working at optimal levels, Menadian said after checking the tower interface. The tower isn't the problem. Riffer is right, silly child. Baba Yaga shapeshifted into her mother form, tired of getting a stiff neck from looking up to him. You are the problem. You have fallen into the trap that powerful mages like you always fail to notice when they tackle a new branch of magic. You are entangled in the web of your rich knowledge and experience. What do you mean? Lith raised an eyebrow in confusion. I know that answering a question with another is rude, but this is how I teach, child, so please humor me. How old were you when you awakened? The mother asked. I was 4, explaining how he had awakened in the crib, and why he was capable of reasoning from such an early age would have been complicated, so Lith stuck to his official biography. And you had yet to meet Solus, correct? Baba Yaga asked, and Lith replied with a nod. You were 4 and alone, yet I bet you had already started to work on your personal spells without any guidance. How many did you create before Solus woke up from her slumber? A few. It was actually dozens of them, but the truth would have sounded like bragging, and that would have been beyond the point. Let me make another educated guess. The mother looked at him straight in the eyes. You only knew the 6 first magic runes for the elements, and used them to expand your abilities in what you only later learned to be spells from tiers 1 to 3. How am I doing? Very well, so much so that you seem to be reading my mind. Lith easily followed her logic, yet he couldn't see her point. No, child, that's Salark's thing, Baba Yaga chuckled. I know what you did as a young awakened because I followed that same path millennia before you were born. Now time for my final question. Did you worry about runes back then? No, I didn't. Lith's eyes went wide in understanding. I just conjured the basic rune for an element, and then manipulated my mana flow to obtain a particular effect or give my spell a specific shape. Yet what you were actually doing was waving runes, you just didn't know it. Baba Yaga nodded. Magic in all of its forms and manifestations is comprised of runes. Fusion magic and spirit magic are no exception, yet you developed them as well, correct? Yes, Lith nodded. Are you saying that? I'm not saying anything that you already haven't yourself, child. The mother cut him short. You've written it in your own book. The roots of magic are imagination and willpower. That's all you had as a child, yet it was enough because it's also all you needed. Chapter 4309 Imagination and Willpower, Part 1. Now it's no different, Baba Yaga said. Researching cursed runes and normal runes is the same thing, yet back when you were a kid, your own ignorance shielded you from fear and expectations. You strived forward, Lith, whereas now you are staring at the stable cursed runes and hope that somehow more runes will fall into your lap. Casting the basic runes will only produce their basic effects if you do it by rote. How can the lodestar inspire you if you imagine and will for nothing? How can you and Elijah hear a new rune if you are not looking for one? You find nothing because your mind has remained empty since the moment we got here. Being in the lodestar won't be of any help unless you decide what you want to achieve and what form it must take. Having a guide is useless if the traveler refuses to move his feet. Even a journey of 1,000 kilometers starts with taking one step. That's how you created your first spells as a child and how you tapped into 0 magic as an adult. You wanted something to happen, and magic answered your will, turning it into reality. Lith nodded and traced the rune for the chaos element again. Ekrasu, the hand sign and magic word were the same, producing another small chaos bullet. Yet this time, Lith imagined the spell to be stronger and split into several small bullets like buckshot. There was no change in the spell before the firing range neutralized it, but a new rune formed in Lith's mind. Ekrasu Situ. Lith drew what looked like an inverted 7 after the double-slitted eye, and conjured the Tier 1 chaos spell, Murder Rain. It was many times stronger than the Chore magic bullet, and released a swarm of chaos needles. Lith's mind, however, had already moved on to the next spell. As the firing range neutralized Murder Rain, he willed the chaos needles to merge into a protective barrier. Akrasu Reta. Lith traced a flourish from left to upwards right after the base stable chaos rune, and the Tier 2 chaos spell, Hollow Buckler, conjured a circular plate in front of him. He dispelled the energy shield and recalled the many times he had witnessed the Tier chaos spell, Howling Void, in the past. Lith willed it to appear at a safe distance in front of him, and imagined it as a tree-thick spear that pierced through his imaginary enemy, killing him on the spot. Akrasu Gata. The three runes appeared in a triangle formation from the center of which emerged a bolt of chaos energy that matched Lith's mental projection. This is incredible. Lith would have never believed it possible if he hadn't just done it himself. And also exhausting. These spells consume a lot of mana for being low tier. Then take a short break and let me practice a bit, Baba Yaga said. With this concentration of world energy, using invigoration is dangerous but also useless. You should recover your strength if you rest for a few minutes. Eyes of Menadian on me, soulless. The mother cast Lith's same spell, copying his movements and words to perfection and obtaining the same effects. Then, she made the more common mistakes a less talented mage would make while handling those new runes on purpose. A small imperfection in the execution of the spells destroyed her fingers at Tier 1, her hand at Tier 2, and her arm at Tier 3. A major blunder would have easily killed anyone without the regenerative abilities of a white core, obliterating about half of Baba Yaga's body. It's not as bad as it looks, she replied to Solus' worried gaze. It's much worse. Even healing is painful. The lingering chaos feeds on the light element of my spells and would make it tough to save someone whose life is hanging by a thread. Now I'm going to try and create a chaos spell by myself, Solus. Wish me luck. Baba Yaga cast the Akrasu rune, picturing a ring of chaos energy forming around her that instantly expanded outwards for dozens of meters. Two unknown chaos runes flickered in front of her eyes, but they blurred out before the mother could see them clearly. She tried a second and a third time, but her whole being seemed to balk at the vision of the cursed runes. A primordial fear and sense of dread shook Baba Yaga's nerves, disrupting her focus at the crucial moment. After many tries and several minutes, she finally conjured the Tier 3 chaos spell, Reaper's Halo. I can't believe it. It took me a boatload of mana and hundreds of attempts to come up with a single new chaos spell, while you created 3 of them in less than a minute. She had already recovered her mana, but she sat down anyway. Fair warning, child. I'm happy for you, but if I ever hear you whine about being unlucky in the next few months, I'll kick your ass. Lith mastered her spell at the first try, and then created a few more of his own. Thank Boer I didn't mock her, or my ass would be experiencing the kicking of a lifetime now, he thought. I think this is more than enough for chaos magic, Lith actually said. We should move on to the other cursed elements and gain solid foundations about them while the Lodestar's effects last. It's a great idea, Baba Yaga grunted in mild annoyance. I'm eager to see if it's possible to weave Tier 4 and 5 cursed spell, but with only 2 elements there is only so much we can try. Do you think we can mix 2 different cursed elements to obtain the upper tiers of magic? Solus asked. That or maybe combine 1 cursed element and 1 normal element, the mother replied. It would be an amazing breakthrough anyway. The only Tier 4 and 5 chaos spells I've seen eldritches use were just chaos imbued with willpower and part of their bloodline abilities. High-tier mirror magic conjures multiple cursed elements at the same time, but they never mix. They each act on their own and always strike in sequence, never together. Did Elijah have any idea or reaction as she watched us training? Lith focused on the first rune of cinder magic, Iratho. No, Solus cleared her throat. She fell asleep during Malishka's turn and has yet to wake up. What a disrespectful, sleepy little imp. Baba Yaga gently caressed the baby girl's head, being careful not to disturb her. Bring Ili back to Kami, Solus, Lith said. If imagination and willpower are the key to learning new spells in the Lodestar, I'm afraid what she might witness if she dreams about something exciting during her afternoon nap. Solus blinked in and out of the tower, returning alone with the eyes of Menadian pointed at Lith and ready to record the new spell. He traced what looked like an asterisk in the air and spoke the chore magic word, conjuring a jet stream of cinder. At the same time as the firing range neutralized it with a 0 blast, Lith willed for his spell to spin on itself at high speed like a drill, and then explode. Chapter 4310 Imagination and Willpower Part 2. Several runes formed in his mind, accompanied by a discordant choir of voices that made it impossible for him to understand a single one. Fuck me sideways, Lith fell to one knee, holding his ears to muffle the deafening noise. "What's wrong, child? Talk to me." The mother had to repeat the question multiple times before he managed to hear her. When Lith was done explaining what had just happened, Baba Yaga sighed in relief. "You've just bitten more than you can chew, child," she said. "A Tier 1 spell can't have so many effects. You need at least Tier 3 for that. Also, you didn't define what kind of explosion you wanted." "A burst of pure fire, a blazing shockwave, a series of concussive blasts. You left your spell open to too many interpretations, and the lodestar delivered all the possible answers to you at the same time. Scale it down to something simpler, and it will be a perfect Tier 2 spell. Either keep the piercing effect, or make the cinder blast explode upon contact." Lith did both, obtaining Eratho Het and Eratho Rack. "That works too," Baba Yaga nodded. "Now move up to Tier 3, but this time picture the effect you want clearly, step by step." Eratho Get Rakat. The 3 runes fused together, conjuring a pillar of cinder the size of Lith's arm that pierced through the firing range's 0 counterspell. Then Fire Stab exploded in a hot flash that consumed most of the oxygen in the room, making what little was left too hot to breathe. If not for the firing range cooling the temperature and injecting fresh air, Lith would have suffered more than a brief fit of cough. "Thank my paranoia I sent Elijah away." Lith cleared his throat. "I would have never forgiven myself if something happened to her." "Don't worry, child. Elijah would have been fine," Baba Yaga replied. "The firing range's timing was impeccable. Not a hot gust of wind reached Solus or me. The only reason you coughed is that you were too close to the point of the explosion. Next time, make your spell detonate at a safe distance. The fire of your own cinder spell can't hurt you, but the heat and lack of humidity can still turn you into a dried-up mummy." That was a safe distance. Lith inwardly cursed at cinder magic. I couldn't risk the spell exploding too close to the wall and hurting Solus. I didn't expect the side effects to spread so far despite the firing range. I'm afraid something similar will happen with all the other cursed elements. Solus shuddered at the thought of the kind of damage cinder could do to the tower and how it might reflect on her. Chaos is relatively safe because it doesn't affect its surroundings. Its power is focused on destruction, whereas the other cursed elements alter everything in their area of effect, and destruction is just a consequence of that. "Solus has a point," Menadian said. "To make matters worse, when I created the enchantments for the firing range, I wasn't aware of cursed elements other than chaos. Are you sure you want to continue with your experiments?" "We still have over 20 hours left," Lith replied. "We're practicing the cursed elements to learn how to use them and warn the children about their potential danger when they grow up. I'm still reeling at the idea Ely might have gotten hurt, but we've just discovered something important. Besides, we still have no choke magic spell. I want to give Basic a go and then see if we can use cursed runes to cast arrays." "I'm confident in your work, Mom," Solus said. "Moreover, the more we learn about cursed elements, the better the firing range can neutralize them. It will protect the kids from themselves in the future, and us from enemies who can cast mirror magic spells." "I'm with them," Baba Yaga nodded. "Also, I'd like to try a few more 0 spells. I'm curious to understand if they are as dangerous as cinder spells and Lith was just lucky when he used them in Amrock, or if we're overlooking something." The mother practiced the cinder spells Lith had just created until she mastered them. Once she deemed to have reached a deep enough understanding of the cursed fire, she created 1 Tier 1, 1 Tier 2, and 1 Tier 3 cinder spells. She needed much longer and many more attempts than Lith, but she succeeded a bit faster than with Chaos. "I'm getting the hang of cinder magic," she nodded. "Yet I have to admit that without Elijah to reveal the chore magic rune and you to pave the road for me, Lith, using mirror magic would have been a pipe dream. I would have never discovered the existence of stable cursed runes on my own. Even after all this practice and watching your progress, there's a large part of me that is still scared stiff of even the basic cursed runes. Creating Tier 1 cursed spells and above requires my full focus, willpower, and the guidance of the lodestar. Without the latter, I would be too busy fighting against my primal dread to notice a single rune." "I know what you mean," Solus nodded. "I'm doing my best to follow you guys, but whenever you conjure a cursed spell, something inside of me screams at me to turn my head and cover my ears." Baba Yaga needed no rest thanks to the endless vitality of her white core and the flood of world energy accumulated inside the lodestar. Lith moved on to practice the choke rune, Basic, developing several Tier 1 spells, a few Tier 2, and a handful of Tier 3. Basic turned the air into a noxious gas, and the lightning bolts it conjured did more than release electricity. They scrambled the magnetic field of everything and everyone they came in contact with, destabilizing their victim like a disease. The firing range needed time to adjust its spells and find the perfect way to neutralize the choke spells. But even then, they were still dangerous when utilized in the confined space of the lodestar. Lith often coughed, and when he failed to visualize a controlled form of his new spells, his hands became numb and his armor consumed lots of energy to protect him from injuries. Baba Yaga followed his lead, limiting herself to the weakest spells of every tier she could think about, sacrificing destructive power in favor of surgical control. Interesting, Lith said after carefully observing the mother as she cast her spells. Until this moment, I thought that the stable cursed runes conjuring one cursed element while also releasing and scattering its opposite all around the caster was something similar to mirror magic's effects. That you couldn't call upon any cursed element without summoning the other, and that the stable runes simply got rid of the second cursed element in a way that doesn't endanger the caster and doesn't require their focus. I was wrong. What do you mean? Solus asked as the mother was already glimpsing the revelation behind those words. It's easier if I show you. Lith set the firing range to neutralize the cinder magic spell that had almost hurt him before, Fire Stab. Chapter 43, 11 Scattered Elements, Part 1. Countering an unknown spell inevitably caused a short delay in the firing range's response. Even with the full power of the tower core and the support of the eyes of Menadian, the firing range couldn't stop something that wasn't recorded in the tower's runes database, which had become part of the runescape. The initial countermeasures would contain the threat until the enchantments of the grimoire fully analyzed the unknown spell and found the perfect response. Now that the firing range knew what it was dealing with, the cinder spell wouldn't manage to burn even confetti. Iratho get Rikat. Lith spoke the magic words for Fire Stab, but didn't perform the hand signs to complete the spell with fake magic. He weaved the 3 runes with body casting, conjuring them inside his open palm to put his theory to the test without the risk of suffering a fatal injury. Solus stared at the exploding vortex with her mouth agape, while Baba Yaga erupted into a silvery laughter of excitement. The firing range had neutralized Fire Stab to perfection. The cinder spell failed to affect the air temperature and humidity. Yet Solus expected that much. What she hadn't expected was that Lith's hand had suffered no wound, and the energy field of his armor had not activated. There wasn't so much as a burnt mark or a boil on his skin. Are you crazy? That was stupid and dangerous. Solus had the eyes of Menadian perform a full checkup on Lith as she examined him with her new breathing technique, Sky Radiance. Neither found anything wrong with him, which surprised Solus even more. How is that possible? She asked. Just a few hours ago, you almost got hurt despite conjuring Fire Stab as far away from yourself as you could. Now instead, you released the spell straight from your palm, yet nothing. Easy, I followed Lady Yaga's teachings and put my imagination and willpower to use, Lith replied. I willed the cinder to take the shape of Fire Stab and the scattered 0 particles that came with it to shroud and protect me. Solus was so shocked that she took a step back, as if the revelation had physically struck her. Of course, her eyes lit up with joy, and her mouth closed in a bright smile. It's so obvious yet so brilliant. That's why Elijah can always conjure the stable cursed elements without all the precautions we always take. It's not just because her spells are weak or thanks to the stable cursed elements in her life force. She's a naive baby, and she doesn't worry about how to obtain what she wants. She just wills to have fun with cursed magic, and that's what happens. Exactly, Lith nodded. We had the answer right in front of us the whole time, yet our need to understand how our spells work blinded us from the truth. Stable cursed elements are dangerous for their caster, but only if the mage doesn't employ all of their parts properly. The scattered opposite cursed element is not just a side effect. It's an integral part of every cursed spell we cast. We've gotten hurt during our previous experiments only because we ignored the scattered cursed element's importance. Even in their chore magic form, cursed spells are as complex as Tier 4 spells. They are comprised of 2 cursed elements, one to conjure the desired effect and the other to form a protective barrier around the mage. Does that mean that I can use cursed magic as well? Solus asked, her eyes brimming with enthusiasm. I don't see why not, Lith shrugged. Once properly developed, dread magic is something anyone can wield safely. We could teach it to Tista and every other member of our family. It would make up for their weak mana cores, and give them a last-ditch ace in the hole. But only after Lith and Yaga perfect it, Menadian chimed in. You can't afford a single mistake while dealing with such destructive energies, Solus, whereas they can. Lith because of the cursed elements in his life force, and Yaga thanks to her white core. Rifa is right, Lith nodded. Also, I'm not going to teach anything to anyone until Dad and the others become proficient with regular magic. Explaining dread magic to them now would be like giving a bag of fire seeds to a kid. He'd mistake them for candies and blow himself and the whole house up. Fine, Solus grunted, but I can at least start conjuring the basic stable cursed runes, right? Wrong, Lith, Menadian, and the mother said in unison. First, I need to devise a suitable exercise routine for you to learn how to sense and control the scattered cursed element. I'm a natural at it thanks to my life force, and so is Elijah. You, instead, don't have a single spark of a single cursed element. Remember how even someone as powerful as Yaga got her head frozen, blown apart, and incinerated when she used the basic runes. I'm wrong and you are right, Solus raised her hands. I yield. After Lith explained his method to control the scattered cursed elements to Baba Yaga to the best of his abilities, they moved on to zero magic. Lith performed all the spells he had already created back in Amrock with body casting, starting with the Jerak rune. He experimented with emitting the zero beams from his fingers, palms, and elbows, never suffering so much as frostbite. Then he practiced the only Tier 10 spell he knew, Snowfly, and created a few more. He used fake magic to try out the new spells since he had no idea how they would manifest and too little experience with the matter. Only once Lith understood how his imagination and willpower shaped each zero spell did he conjure them again with body casting. I wasn't imagining things. My hands get slightly colder every time I conjure a Tier 10 spell. He brought his fingertips to his lips. Weird, Solus pondered. You didn't have such a problem with fire stab, and that's Tier 3. Maybe it's because of your fire dragon nature. It grants you a strong connection with all kinds of mystical fires, and maybe cinder magic is no different. I believe she's on to something, Baba Yaga said. You displayed the greatest degree of control with chaos and cinder magic. It must be due to your natural affinities as a Tiamat. Whatever the answer, I need more practice. Lith cast the Tier 10 spells until the scattered cinder neutralized the zero completely. At that point, he moved on to Tier 2 spells, improving his control over the scattered cinder again before attempting to use body casting for Tier 3 spells. Once he was done, Baba Yaga followed in his footsteps, starting from Jerak and trying to sense the scattered cinder. When that failed, she used body casting nonetheless. Her hands shattered, and her arms exploded into frozen shards, but her severed limbs would regenerate in a heartbeat. Stupid, fearful brain, she grunted. I had to tap into my survival instinct to overcome my fear enough to detect the scattered cinder. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but I'm going at it until I'm sure I've gotten the hang of it. Chapter 43:12 Scattered Elements, Part 2. Don't apologize, Yaga. Lith shook his head. This is far from a waste of time. You are facing the same struggle that Solus and the others will have to overcome before they can use dread magic. The better your understanding of scattered elements, the easier it will be for you to teach your technique to others, and the faster they will learn. I couldn't have said it better. Solus gave him the thumbs up, ignoring the frown on her mother's and her friends' faces. Then don't mind me if I do. By the time Baba Yaga mastered Tier 30 spells and managed to body cast them without losing a limb, Camilla called everyone for lunch. They resumed the training immediately after the meal, starting their practice over from chaos and focusing on the scattered decay. Once Baba Yaga reached a sufficient grasp on chaos, they moved back to cinder. This is an incredibly rewarding experience, Lith panted. Even with the support of the tower, the rich flow of world energy released from the lodestar, and the rest he got while waiting for Baba Yaga to be done with her exercises. The practice of dread magic was demanding on the mind, the body, and the mana core. Even the chore magic spells actually conjured 2 cursed elements, and both required a high degree of focus not to hurt their caster. Also, dread spell consumed lots of mana, causing mana abuse as fast as spirit magic. After several hours of relentless practice, Lith needed a break. That's an understatement. Baba Yaga had switched to her crone form to ease the burden on her mother form. Threading a new path is always exciting. We are the first mages on Magur to have understood a new form of magic. We are now equals to Tezca when he invented dimensional magic, and to Salark when she invented creation magic. You didn't invent it on your own? Solus asked. I sure did, but I already knew it existed. The Red Mother shrugged. It made things easier, and finding the path someone else has already trodden is much less exciting than finding it yourself. Speaking of Grandma, I'm afraid we have to start adding cloaking runes to our dread spells, like she does when she uses creation magic in front of witnesses, Solus said. Otherwise, dragons might sooner or later crack dread magic with dragon eyes, while the Master's hybrids could resonate with it and learn stable cursed runes on their own. A fair point, Lith sighed, yet that's not what I'm worried about now. You're worried, Baba Yaga echoed in disbelief. About what? Maybe it's just my rampant paranoia talking, but isn't this too easy? Lith replied. I expected to learn a thing or two about dread magic and maybe start researching if it's possible to use stable cursed runes to cast arrays. Instead, we came up with several spells for the first 3 tiers of dread magic for all the cursed runes we are aware of, and I even found a way to harness the power of dread magic safely. I can't help but think that progressing this fast is not natural. That maybe we are under the influence of an unknown force that's lulling us in a false sense of security, too. Lith's words trailed off as Menadian, and the crone stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Easy, Baba Yaga scoffed, and Menadian snorted. You call this easy? It sure wasn't that hard, Lith shrugged. Well then, you runt, answer me this. When you showed me your void magic textbook, and I learned all the spells it contained after reading them once, was it because void magic is an easy discipline? Of course not. Lith dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. If that were the case, void magic would have been discovered long before I was born. All awakened families would have mastered it millennia before Silverwing even shared her legacy. Then how do you think I've done it? The crone nodded and crossed her arms. You are an ancient being who has mastered all the known branches of magic, and even a few that no one else on Magur knows. Lith snorted. It's normal that someone as knowledgeable and experienced as you has no difficulty learning void magic. Grandma did the same after I gave her a single demonstration, and I bet it was the same for you. You too must have reached an understanding of the light and darkness elements so deep that you have wandered along the edges of void magic more than once. When I've shown you the complete picture, all the pieces of the puzzle you had already accrued over the millennia have fallen into place. My textbook just filled the empty spaces left, assuming there was any, of course. Exactly, the first ruler of the flames nodded. The same applies to you learning dread magic, Lith. You are no upstart youth who has dabbled in the mystical arts for a few weeks. You are someone who practiced magic for over 2 decades, reaching heights that most mages need centuries just to notice them on the horizon. You have learned rare and elusive disciplines like light mastery and creation magic, even creating your own branch of magic. What we did today looks easy because of the solid foundations you already possess, but it's far from it. The only person of your age more accomplished than you are I've ever met is my Effie. Salu slash me, they said in unison. You reached the violet on your own before 20, Solus. You were a skilled light master and a much better forge-master than Lith is, Menadian replied. Sure, you had a mage tower, the first ruler of the flames as your mentor and several skilled friends, but luck is also part of someone's talent. I agree, especially on the role your amazing friends played in your education, Solus, Baba Yaga chuckled. Still, everything you have achieved so far is no less impressive, Lith. Thank you, he scratched his head in embarrassment. Also, you now have my tower at your disposal as well, Menadian snorted. You are one of the only 3 beings whose life force holds stable cursed elements and are using my lodestar. If it's not easy for you, then it would be impossible for anyone else. To use Rifa's explanation for blade weapons, creating a new spell can be considered a hard task akin to pushing a boulder, but uphill instead of on flat ground. Having natural affinities reduces the slope, and so does your accumulated knowledge. Being inside a fringe, or in our case inside the lodestar, shifts the slope to your advantage further, to the point that gravity helps you a little. Magur may not be a god and doesn't answer prayers, but at least it seems to listen to mages, Lith pondered. Yes and no, Baba Yaga shook her head. We are all children of Magur, and the world energy enters our cores to become mana every day. Our bodies are comprised of all elements, or we wouldn't have fusion magic. Each one of us is much smaller and weaker than Magur, but we are not much different from our planet. Chapter 43:13 The First Mage, Part 1. Along with Magur's energy, we also contain what you call runes. When you imagine something and will for it to happen, the runes form within you. The corresponding runes in the world energy resonate with those conjured by your mana core, engendering an elemental spell. When you enter a fringe, Magus can distinguish the runes generated by your mana core among the billions of others so that, when you stutter, it helps you to spell the words right like any parent would. Do you think this is how humans discovered magic? Solus asked. A lucky traveler stumbled into a fringe and received Magus' help. That's how a bard would spin it, but I doubt that's how it happened. The crone shook her head. I've discussed this matter many times with the Guardians and my fellow White Cores, and we've come to a common theory. A long time ago, a human born with a powerful core and an affinity for an element was about to die. If at the hands of an enemy, a predator, or just out of thirst, it's impossible to say. What matters is that human didn't want to die, and in their desperation they conjured a chore magic rune. Upon returning to their village, they shared their discovery with the rest of their tribe, and in time, all 6 runes were discovered. That I can believe and accounts for chore magic, but I meant real magic. What the first awakened human turned into true magic, and the others developed into fake magic, Solus said. I was getting to that, Baba Yaga replied. I'm certain that soon the humans got accustomed to the power magic gave them and grew frustrated with its limits. As most humans do, they gave up after a while and thought that was it. Until someone so brilliant, talented, and stubborn that for simplicity's sake we'll call Manohar, refused to believe that chore magic was the best he could do. Maybe he put himself into danger like his progenitor, or maybe he just had a world-class hissy fit while standing above a mana geyser. This past Manohar learned another rune, creating the first Tier 1 spell and becoming the first fake mage on Magus. That sounds like something Manohar would have done, Lith nodded. You've seen it yourself. Once someone breaks the invisible chain created by the word impossible, many others suddenly realize they can do the same. The crone continued. It's the reason people like me, you, and Silverwing are necessary. Scholars like me believe that soon after this passed, Manohar discovered the first spells, fake magic spread like wildfire. No matter if friends, neighbors, or enemies, anyone who saw a mage in action understood the potential of magic and imitated them. I can see it happen, Solus nodded. After all, fake magic is far from subtle. You can hear the chant and see the hand signs. Anyone with a powerful enough mana core could learn any spell after seeing it a few times. Also, I doubt the first fake mages thought of adding flourishes to their runes to mislead their opponents until they had their own spells used against them. Lith pondered. What about tiers 4 and 5? That's an entirely different subject, Baba Yaga replied. One you should ask Tezker about. He's one of the few people still alive from that time. If you ask me, though, awakened geniuses created tier 4 and 5 after reaching an understanding of magic deeper than a fake mage ever could. It was probably the work of generations of awakened bloodlines, collecting countless data through trial and error until someone brilliant enough to make sense of it was born. What about you, Malishka? Solus asked. How did you learn tier 4 and 5? I'm not that old, Effie, the crone chuckled. In my younger days, all branches of magic you call specializations had already been created and thoroughly developed, yet after I escaped my city, I had no one to guide me. After I awakened, I refined my body and core, and once I reached the limits of Tier 3 magic, I devoted most of my time to practicing my fighting skills. The Odi had developed the upper tiers of light and forge-mastering magic, but someone from the lower caste like me wasn't allowed anywhere near a mage's lab unless they dragged you inside as a test subject. I remained ignorant of them despite my best efforts until I met a member of the Awakened Council by chance. Our kind was even rarer back then, so Akata was relatively friendly with me despite the common distrust for the Odi. She introduced me to the council of the time, and they assigned me a mentor. Of course, the first one I got was an exploitative piece of garbage who used me as cheap labor and taught me next to nothing. Luckily for me, cloaking runes weren't a thing back then. I learned on my own by observing his spells, studying his artifacts, and reading the books he left lying around the rooms I was allowed into. Once I got sick of him and realized I had already squeezed most of the casual knowledge I could from him, I bylaid. I was a self-awakened like you, Lith, so no one could force me into that 100 years apprenticeship bullshit. I went on like that for almost 10 years, changing over 10 mentors until I met Rekari. He took me in because I was an Odi, and he hated my people's guts. They had conquered his village and enslaved everyone he knew. Rekari wanted to use me to settle the score. Wait, I thought that as a self-awakened, you couldn't be forced into an apprenticeship against your will, Solus said. How did he pull that off? Did he hurt you? My bad, I should have been clearer. The crone smiled at Solus' honest worry. Rekari hated the Odi's high caste, not every member of the Odi race. When he learned I was a lower caste and hated the high caste as much as he did, he offered me a deal. I would teach Rekari everything about my people's weak points, how we built our cities and our language to infiltrate the Odi settlements, and he would teach me high-tier magic like a true mentor. I took that deal and added a condition of my own. I'd go with him, and while he killed the high caste, I freed the lower caste imprisoned in the working camps and experimental labs. We made a great team. Was he handsome? Solus hadn't missed how her friend's eyes sparkled as she recalled the time she had spent with her mentor, even while describing gruesome circumstances. We've rested enough, Baba Yaga cleared her throat. Let's get back to work, shall we? Only a couple of questions, Lith said. When did you meet the Guardians? Much later, of course, she shrugged. I was already an accomplished mage, and I was trying to overcome the limits of the magical theories of the time. No Guardian took you in as an apprentice out of pity or because you were a pretty face. You had to add something to their knowledge to prove your worth. So were you a pretty face? Solus asked. I swear to the gods I didn't answer these questions when you were still called Elfin. I won't answer them now, the crone grunted. Chapter 43:14 The First Mage, Part 2. Or rather, I did once after you got me drunk on Red Dragon. Luckily for me, you've lost your memory. What's your last question, Lith? I'm a bit worried about Elijah, he replied. She has learned the basic runes for all the cursed elements but light and earth, the elements of creation. Does it have something to do with her natural affinities, or do you think decay and corruption scare even her? You are overthinking like usual, child, the crone smiled. Elijah is a healthy baby who enjoys the protection of the Guardians. How many times has she heard the magic words for a healing spell? None, Lith pondered. We either use invigoration or conjure healing spells with true magic. Also, Elijah spends most of her time indoors or in the air with her friends. Do you think she had many opportunities to witness someone conjure earth magic? Baba Yaga asked. I see, Lith nodded. She learned the chore magic cursed runes for the elements we use to perform house chores, darkness to disinfect, fire to light the fireplace, and so on. Exactly, use earth and light magic in front of Elijah, and she'll learn their cursed counterparts in a jiffy, the crone said. After putting his paranoia to rest, Lith devoted his full focus to deepening his understanding of the cursed elements. Before the lodestar ran out of power, Lith and Baba Yaga managed to test Tier 4 spells and arrays with dread magic. The good news was that it turned out to be feasible. The bad news was that they made little progress on it. Unlike the lower tiers of magic, Tier 4 and above required several runes. So many that even the simplest Tier 4 spell array they could think of made Lith fall to his knees with a splitting headache and gave Baba Yaga a panic attack. Dread magic was true to its name, and the sight of so many cursed runes at once was more than even the Red Mother could bear. Combat spells were simpler, but adding a second element more than tripled the challenge. Lith had to separate normal and cursed runes, weave them together, and control the three elements that Tier 4 dread magic conjured. The scattered cursed element was the key element to protect not only the caster, but also the Tier 4 spell as a whole, and keep it from imploding on itself. I'm glad the lodestar takes so long to charge up, and it's a hassle to use. By the end of the 24 hours, invigoration had lost most of its effectiveness on Lith. If this were a fringe, I'd only need a good night's rest before resuming our experiments. If this were a fringe, either the voices would have driven you insane, or Magur would have summoned you to have a chat. Small pearls of sweat shone on Baba Yaga's forehead. She would probably be curious to know why you're calling upon her bad side, and might even give you a taste of the medicine you're so stubbornly looking for. Let's follow your advice and take a break, Malishka, Solus said. You and Lith can use a bit of time to master the control over the scattered cursed elements. Also, you should try to get used to dread runes. Maybe you can't get rid of the primordial fear they inspire in you, but I'm sure you can learn an effective coping mechanism. My thoughts exactly, Baba Yaga nodded. Until I find a way to handle more than 3 dread runes at a time, I can't teach you. Solus and Lith has to work alone. We are not able to help him, and he would waste his time. Yet I have to admit that I'd pay your weight in Davros to see a perfect Tier 4 dread spell. Why my weight? What about Lith? Solus grunted, yet the maiden ignored her. Do you have any idea what that blue light you produced earlier was? She asked. I'm not sure, but I have seen it in the past when I was visiting a fringe, and I have a theory about it, Lith replied. Only time will tell if I'm right. Space. After leaving the lodestar, Lith and Solus focused the tower on the mana injector and took one of the longest showers in their lives. Lith was tired, hungry, and in dire need of sleep. Before going to bed, however, he announced to Orion, Gianni, and Ryla that his new forge-mastering technique wasn't a failure, but he had a long way to go before he could make it work. They knew that Lith was an awakened, and seeing him look like a miner after a double shift sold his lie better than any detail ever could. Lith was exhausted, and since there was no news about a mysterious disaster or a bloody battle anywhere on Garland, he couldn't have snuck out for a fight. How did you get so tired, and why is Solus in much better shape than you? Orion asked. Because she can use invigoration only on herself. I have to share it with Rifa, Lith grunted. I'm a demon, the first ruler of the flames shrugged. To display my best techniques, I need my full strength, and only Lith can fuel my core. After a hearty meal, he informed his friends and family of the results of his real experiments. This is nice. Quilla was as excited as on her first day of academy. You need to be careful, though. One mistake and there will be no one left to teach dread magic to me. I'm touched by your concern, he chuckled. How was your day? Terrible, Roz sighed. I spent half the time using accumulation and the other half reading that damn book. After a few hours, I expected to actually die of boredom. Same, Senton shrugged. Without the tower and with a core as weak as mine, I got exhausted after practicing magic for half an hour. That's a great result for a beginner, Solus praised him. I meant that invigoration lost its effect after half an hour. I stand corrected, that's not good at all, Solus said. Mom, Renaa, what about you? Lith asked. We had to run a lot and then lift a lot of weights, Renaa grunted. Celia worked us to the bone. What did you expect? The huntress scoffed. You are no blacksmith, and Alina is no farmer. With those toothpick arms and weak muscles, your body is much less developed than your core. Space. The next day, life resumed as usual. Fenrir and the triplets thrived after bonding with their magical beasts. Lennart, in particular, found the strength to face his trauma and start healing. Meodin reminded the boy of Macquarie, but his warmth and affection also proved that the bike didn't consider Lennart responsible for what had happened during the kidnapping attempt. Also, the temptation to join his siblings whenever they rode their steeds across the mansion's park was hard to resist. Bikes were lazy creatures by nature, and Meodin wouldn't have enjoyed the physical activity much if not for Fluffy. Two male bikes in the same space triggered their competitive spirit, and neither could accept being the weakest in the group. Chapter 43:15 Conflicting Natures, Part 1. The friendly rivalry pushed the two bikes to train a lot in order not to get last place in the children's games, and Lennart to spend a lot of time out of his head. He was a healthy, happy child surrounded by people who loved him. Fresh air and group activities were the best therapy for him. Renaa knew that her boy would never regain the innocence he had lost, but she was happy to see that the mental scar from Macquarie's death faded bit by bit. The only one who failed to move from square one was Laren. More than a week had passed since the day of the attack on Zekel's house, yet he showed no sign of improvement, no matter what Slash or his family members did. Laren had no trouble during waking hours, but would experience terrible nightmares the moment he closed his eyes. The dream was always the same. Laren tightened his grip on Burroughs, Slash pinned the awakened to the ground, and the boy delivered the finishing blow. Laren had seen those images enough times to know their every detail, yet that only made his reaction more violent over time. He started to sleep so little that he dozed off in the middle of the day, and to puke so often that he had to always carry a bucket around. Protector and Celia were worried sick, but they didn't know how to help someone who claimed to be fine. They tried to give Laren some space, let him hang out with his friends who had shared a similar experience, and arranged accidental opportunities to be alone with Nalrond and Lith. The Agni was a big brother to all the Fastero kids, while Lith was universally considered the cool uncle. Laren's parents hoped that if their son didn't feel comfortable opening up to them, he would do it with his peers or other adults he trusted. After a particularly bad night accompanied by even worse puking fits, Celia and Protector were at their wits' end. I know that you barely know us and that guardians aren't supposed to intervene in human affairs, but can't you give us a hand? Celia asked. You are the guardian of children, and Laren is a sweet 6-year-old boy. There must be something you can do for him. You're in luck, woman, Scarlet the Sekhmet replied. I'm not much of a guardian yet. I'm even weaker than you are at the moment, so nobody will care if I just give you some advice. Thanks, Celia gave her a deep bow. Laren's situation is not normal, woman, but it's not uncommon either, Scarlet said. Sadly, too many bad things happen to our younglings. I've seen much worse during Bulker's attack, so I know what you are going through. Until not long ago, mentioning the god of death's name would have made the Sekhmet's blood boil. Now, however, she felt little while recalling those memories. She had forgotten nothing about those 2 days. Scarlet remembered the names of everyone who had died during that battle, and how they had died while projecting the hologram of their features. Yet those events seemed to have taken place decades ago, and stirred only sadness in her heart. And this despite Tyrus' training that keeps me grounded, Scarlet thought. I wonder what would have become of me if I had ventured into Magur alone after becoming a guardian. Is it the power or the immortality that makes me so detached? Only time will tell. It pains me to say this, but there's nothing you can do for Laren, woman. Scarlet kept talking even while lost in thought, her mind capable of following both the conversation with Celia and her own musing. That's it, Celia snorted in disbelief. I don't need a guardian for this kind of advice. Anyone could have told me that resolving this kind of trauma takes time. Guess what, guardian of the obvious, I'm not giving up on my son. It's not a matter of time. Scarlet raised her hand for silence. It's a matter of patience. Right now, Laren is in desperate need of help, but he doesn't know how to ask for it. He's facing a primal inner conflict that at his age he can't handle alone. Yet pressuring him will only make things worse, woman. Laren has yet to process his feelings, and forcing him to relive those events when he's not ready would deepen his wounds. You have done everything you can for him. Keep being there for Laren. Let him know you're not ashamed of what he did and that you don't think less of him for what he's going through. Your son is a warrior wiser than you think. When he understands that he can't win this battle alone, he'll come to you, woman. Just make sure that when the moment comes, you don't fuck it up. Thank you, Celia sighed. By the way, how come you know my son's name yet you keep calling me woman? And why did you warn only me to be careful? What about this oaf? She pointed at Protector, who had been by her side the entire time. I'm the guardian of the children, not of their parents, Scarlet scoffed. You're just one of the many women of this house, and I don't care about any of you enough to remember your names. As for your husband, I know and respect Protector. Unlike you, he knows how to listen. Instead of insulting me, he's been reflecting on my words even when they were vague. I was just worried sick about Laren and annoyed by your attitude. Celia blushed a bit. And do you think Protector is not? Scarlet shook her head. What if Laren can't find the words to express how he feels and begins to stutter? Will you nag him into talking at a pace you like, or will you wait quietly and listen? Space. Later that night, Celia adjusted the 2 extra pillows for their regular guests. You know there's plenty of space on the floor, she said. Slash never left Laren's side, and the bed was too small for someone the size of an emperor beast. The Jerry had learned to shapeshift, and her chosen form was that of a cute little girl with strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. No matter what form Slash took, Celia only saw her as the pile of coins she had spent to fix all of the Jerry's messes. That and the emperor beast putting herself between Celia and her son whenever he slept with his parents irked Celia to no end. It's a good idea. Beware though it gets cold in the morning. You'd better use a sleeping bag. Slash had little affection for the huntress after Celia had given her not 1 but 2 unflattering names. You little Protector cleared his throat, cutting Celia short. Can you 2 please stop arguing? I don't want either of you to leave, Laren said, putting the final nail in the coffin of the quarrel. Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. Don't you want me to read you a story? Protector asked, receiving a soft snoring in reply. Laren was so exhausted from insomnia that he had fallen asleep the moment his head touched the pillow. Chapter 43:16 Conflicting Natures, Part 2. Celia and Slash glared at each other for a couple of seconds before forgetting about their grudges and focusing on Laren. Both of them and Protector wrapped the boy in a delicate embrace. They didn't want to smother Laren, but they knew that the nightmare would haunt his sleep whenever he believed himself to be alone. The night passed peacefully until it wasn't. Despite Slash's bushy tail tickling Laren's leg and Ryman's hand on his shoulder, he was once again forced to relive the day of the kidnapping attempt. This time, however, the nightmare didn't start from the last seconds of the fight, but from the collapse of the roof of Zekel's house. Laren saw the Awakened try to kill Roz and kidnap his friends, only for Aaron and Lyria to foil their plan. He remembered the screams of the triplets, the desperate cries of Surin, and the primal force that those voices had aroused in him. The desire to protect those who were weaker than him, even if it meant engaging in a losing battle. Laren killed the awakened man over and over, uncaring for who he was or what he wanted. Laren could only think about the danger the Verhins were in, and how his father was endangering his life to shield Laren from harm. Even worse was the memory of the days that followed the murder. Laren knew that what he had done was wrong and foolish. He knew that he was supposed to feel guilty for taking another man's life. Yet he felt nothing. His heart was at peace with Laren's actions, and that scared the boy more than anything else. He was afraid of being no different from the people his father and uncles fought every day. A selfish, human-faced monster, without a conscience that only cared about himself, and had no regard for the lives of others. Laren didn't puke that night. He cried, letting out all the feelings he couldn't name, the fear for his humanity, the grief for the man he had killed, the pain for what he had done, and the awareness that he would do it again if necessary. Laren cried while his family could only listen quietly. Celia wanted nothing more than to take her son in her arms and reassure him that everything would be all right. Yet she had done that many times in the previous days, and it had never worked. Moreover, Scarlett's words still echoed in Celia's mind. I want my baby to be happy and stop crying, but that's not what's best for Laren. He needs to vent without listening to the worry in my voice or my tears mixing with his. He needs this. Celia waited, limiting herself to caressing Laren's leg while Ryman held his shoulder. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up, Laren said after he had no more tears to shed. Protector dismissed the issue with a wave of the hand, offering the young boy a glass full of freshly conjured water. Laren gulped it down, finding relief for his sore, dry throat. Do you want to go back to sleep, or do you want to talk about your dream? Ryman asked, his voice filled with fatherly affection, yet his words held no expectation. I don't remember it, Laren lied through his teeth, lowering his eyes in shame. His father was offering him a hand, yet he was too cowardly to take it. It's fine, Ryman nodded. What do you want to do? Laren didn't want to lie down. The pain was too raw, yet he felt guilty for ruining everyone's sleep. Can we stay like this for a bit, please? Sure, Celia nodded as Slash stood up and left. Before the huntress could have mean thoughts about the Jerry, she returned with a bowl half filled with water and a clean towel. Laren thanked her, washing his face of snot and tears. Once he was done, she took her time emptying the bowl in the bathroom and waited outside the door for a while. Maybe Laren feels more comfortable talking only with his parents, she thought, and she was right. It took Laren a few minutes to muster the courage to speak, but he was so tense that he didn't notice the passing of time. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. He glanced at the door, afraid it could open any second. Please, don't be mad at me. Laren was unaware that Slash had left after hearing his voice. If he ever asked what it had taken her so long, Slash would tell him she had gone for a midnight snack. She cooked herself a steak for a foolproof alibi and because she was hungry. We won't get mad, we promise, Celia said, inwardly thanking Slash for her thoughtfulness. The Jerry had taken a handful of seconds to grab the bowl. Putting it away was bound to be even faster unless she was doing it on purpose. Laren hesitated a bit, but he was afraid Slash could come back any second and hear him, so he forced himself to speak. He told his parents about his lack of remorse, the nightmares that haunted him, and the fear that there was something wrong with him. That one day he might hurt someone he loved and not feel guilty about it. I know that killing is wrong. Laren twisted and pulled the bedsheets in his hands. Yet no matter how much I think about what I did to that man, I don't regret it. I feel proud of it. He took a pause to observe his parents' reactions, and when he saw a wide array of emotions on their faces but no disgust or blame, he continued. If I don't feel anything for doing something wrong, then there must be something wrong with me. Only bad people hurt other people, right? You tell me, Protector replied. I hunt criminals for a living. Your mother hunts animals. Does that make us bad people? No, Laren denied such a disgusting idea from the bottom of his heart. You help justice by catching the bad guys before they commit more crimes. Mom only takes what we need to live. She taught us never to make our prey suffer. Exactly, Ryman nodded. Do you remember our camping trip a few years ago? When you taught us how to hunt and move in our Emperor Beast form? Sure. What about it? Laren tilted his head in confusion. Do you remember your first prey? Protector asked. A rabbit, Laren replied. It was so cute, but I was so hungry and it tasted so good. Did you feel anything after killing it? Laren opened his mouth, but no matter how much he racked his brain, the answer surprised him. No, he said in horror. Does this mean there was something wrong with me even 2 years ago? Not at all, son, Ryman caressed his head. The reason you are so confused is that your human conscience is clashing with your Skal instinct. One thing emperor beasts carry on from their magical beast ancestors is the indifference towards the life of our prey and enemies, even if they are members of our own species. Humans, instead, make a big fuss about it. Isn't the way of the beasts wrong? Laren asked. Chapter 43:17 Not That Different, Part 1. Wrong, should the eagle or the wolf starve to death not to hurt the lamb? Should the lamb starve to death not to hurt the grass? Protector asked, and Laren shook his head in reply. Son, as you know, I started as a simple wolf and went all the way to awakening. I killed hundreds of animals, abominations, humans, and even a few mad rise. Do you think I ever regret it? The answer is no. If I didn't hunt, my pack would starve. If I didn't put down newborn abominations, they would have destroyed the Tron woods. If I didn't kill those rise, they would have killed me and started a war against the other kings. The reason magical beasts experience remorse differently from humans is that we have no home, law, or protection aside from what we make. In the wilds, hesitation kills, Laren. If you think about it, human society is not that different. What do you mean? He asked. Do you remember when the undead attacked our house? Or when Meln ambushed you and your friends? Protector asked, and Laren nodded. Uncle Lith exterminated the undead, and Mr. Vaster got rid of the bad people that wanted to hurt you, but that doesn't make them bad men. Once someone is bent on hurting you, there is no space for dialogue. You can only fight back or be their victim. Your father is right. Celia saw the doubts on Laren's face and chimed in. I don't think less of Crash for protecting your sister from those awakened, and I don't blame you for what you did. You were trying to save the lives of our friends, Laren. I'm so proud of you and your sister that I could fly. Yet you two also scared me so much that you are grounded until the day you get yourselves a job or enroll in an academy. The young boy looked his mother in the eyes and saw she wasn't joking. What I'm trying to say, Laren, is that as a Skal you'll never feel guilty for defending yourself or your loved ones, Protector said. The pack comes first, then you, and then everybody else. Without the pack, you are alone against a hostile world. Without you, the pack is a colder, darker place. Only when you and your pack are safe can you afford mercy for your enemies. It's a cruel concept for a kid, something I hoped you wouldn't have to learn until much later in your life. Ryman gently caressed his son's head. I'm sorry you have to go through this much suffering at such a young age, Laren. I'm sorry that part of your internal turmoil comes from the blood you have inherited from me. Yet I'm not sorry about what you did, what we did. You already know it because I was with you while you fought that bad man. I don't blame you for what you did either, Dad. You were just trying to save my life. Laren nodded. He remembered his father's fear for his children's safety, and the burning fury that matched Laren's as they fought together to stop the people who had taken Tyrion away. Laren had felt but an echo of the pain Ryman had suffered for taking upon himself the wounds of his children, and only after returning to his family had the boy understood the extent of his father's sacrifice. On the one hand, the depth of Protector's love moved Laren. On the other hand, the realization that his father had almost died for him exacerbated the young boy's guilt. For what is worth, Emperor beasts and humans are not that different, son, Ryman said. When it comes to protecting their loved ones, parents act the same way no matter their race. Ask your mother. Mom, Laren turned to Celia. Well, sweetie, if I were half as strong as Uncle Lith and those bad people were after you and your siblings. Her warm expression twisted into a mask of unbridled rage, and her eyes became cold. I would have stopped at nothing to ensure they would never threaten you again. Celia kept vague on purpose not to scare her son, but her enchanted knife appeared in her clenched hand, speaking volumes of the means she was willing to employ and the lengths she would go to get the job done. So when the moment comes and you have to choose your life force, don't be too harsh on your dad, she said, putting the knife away as soon as she noticed her slip of the mind. He's the reason you are still here, and I don't care one bit about what he does as long as he keeps you and your siblings safe. I'm human, but I'm also a mother, and I have my priorities straight. Gods, I still can't believe I've almost lost you and your sister. Celia hugged Laren tight, checking him for injuries for the umpteenth time as warm tears streaked down her face and dropped on his head. I'm fine, Mom, I swear. Laren didn't need to ask what Slash would have done since she was about to kill the Awakened when Laren had beaten her to it. Thank you, I feel better now. What do you say if we go back to sleep now, sweetie? Celia asked. Sure, Mom, but what about Slash? The boy finally noticed how long it had been since the Jerry had left the room. What if someone attacked her on the way back from the bathroom? Nah, don't worry. Slash took those questions as her cue and walked through the door while holding a steaming tray. I was a bit hungry and went for a midnight snack. Here's your serving. Steak and roasted potatoes are not a snack, Celia grumbled, but so did her stomach at the delicious smell that wafted to her nose. Thanks, I'm hungry too, Laren's stomach roared in approval. All those emotions had worked him quite an appetite. He jumped off the bed and rushed to the room's coffee table that Slash had already set for him. Ryman and Celia too would have loved to have a bite, but they didn't want to take their son's food. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you. She took 2 breakfast trays out of her dimensional amulet. That's very kind of you. Protector took a bite of the juicy meat first and then of the crispy potatoes. Not really, Slash shrugged. I've raided Lith's pantry. Don't we all? Celia replied in between mouthfuls. If he notices something, let's blame this on Fluffy. The fatas always tries to cheat on his diet. Poor Fluffy, Laren snorted a laugh since he had his mouth full. That night, Laren slept a bit better. His conscience was still troubled by his actions, but expressing his fears to his parents and receiving their unconditional love lightened the heavy burden he carried. Space. Who raided the pantry last night? Lith asked during breakfast. Fluffy swallowed hard and hid his snout in his bowl, hoping to go unnoticed. Whoever it was, I remind you that I have a surveillance system. If you don't come forward now and wait for me to check the recordings, you're going to be in big trouble. Chapter 43:18 Not That Different Part 2. I did it, Fluffy whined. I raided the pantry. Fluffy, Garrick dropped his cutlery in shock. How could you do that? What about your diet? The diet is the problem. I was so hungry I couldn't sleep. The bike whined, rolling on his back and exposing his soft belly in submission. Thanks for your honesty, Lith said, staring at Celia. I appreciated it. Space. Hey, Lith, aren't we forgetting something? Solus asked after checking the fusion reactor's status and restoring the full power in the rest of the tower's floors. Not that I'm aware of, he replied. What about our prisoners in the pits of agony? She said. It's been over a week and we haven't interrogated them once. Oh, right, Lith nodded. Since the reactor is fully charged, we can skip the paper trail of the gate and tower warp to the desert. Do you want to do it now or after the morning training? Now is better, she replied. Those people may be scumbags, but I don't want them to suffer more than necessary. Lith felt no sympathy for his prisoners nor regret for missing the deadline to interrogate them, but he kept quiet in respect for Solus' feelings. For that same reason, he pulled all the prisoners out of the pits of agony and handed them plenty of food and water once they arrived. The awakened looked as if they had been stranded in the blood desert for months, their faces gaunt and their body thin from malnourishment. Salark's pits kept their prisoners alive and sane, but barely. The awakened received only enough nourishment to survive the daily tortures and not faint from hunger or thirst. Everything else was a luxury that their crimes denied them. The awakened's first reaction to the absence of pain was fear. The pits also cycled between torment and rejuvenation to ensure that no one would lose their mind or become numb to the pain. All the awakened were terrified of the sudden relief because they knew what would come next. It was a false hope that only fueled their despair and broke their will with each cycle of torture. The second reaction was confusion, followed by hunger. Without the pain, their bodies focused on the greatest source of discomfort at hand. The weakness from their prolonged starvation made them dizzy, while their parched lips ached from their many cracks. The awakened would have done anything for a morsel of rotten food, and said anything for a single drop of water. It was the reason they noticed the trays before them almost immediately despite their precarious sanity. Lith had prepared good food and plenty of water for them, and the awakened threw themselves at the trays like hungry animals. They had cutlery and glasses, yet they ate with their hands and drank straight from the jugs. Lith waited for the awakened to be done with their meal before addressing them, aware that his prisoners lacked the lucidity to see or hear anything until their condition improved. The awakened licked their plates, their hands, and then growled at each other, hoping to find someone who had some food left. I would like to apologize for leaving you in the pits of agony for so long. Lith's cold voice expressed no remorse. It felt akin to a knife stabbing at the awakened's brains that forced them to forget about the food and focus on him. Lith had the power to set them free, kill them on the spot, or prolong their misery, and the awakened knew it. Their defiance had been broken and ground into dust over the long days spent in the pits of agony. All the awakened had left was a tiny hope and the will to bargain their way out of their predicament. You see, I have fulfilled my promise and delivered a powerful blade weapon to foul the Hydra. Lith conjured the images of the demonstration and the crowd that had attended the event from his council amulet. This way, the awakened knew it was public news, and not just a lie to torment them. I've triggered the largest manhunt Garland has ever seen. Every council elder, representative, and divine beast is scouring the continent for those like you. As you can imagine, the information you possess has already lost much of its value. I forgot about your existence because I don't need you anymore. Your collaboration is irrelevant to me. I don't care whether you tell me what you know or keep your mouth shut anymore. The only reason I'm here today instead of letting you rot in the pits of agony for the rest of your miserable lives is that I don't like to leave a single stone unturned. Those of you who are willing to talk, step forward and open a mind link with me. I won't believe a word you say, but your thoughts cannot lie. You can still omit something, but you also have to pray I don't notice. Everyone else will return to the pits of agony immediately and will stay there until I remember about you again. The awakened exchanged nervous glances, not knowing what to do. They wanted to come forward and put an end to their suffering, but they were afraid of what would happen once they outlived their usefulness. Every second they spent outside the pits was a small miracle, so they tried to stall for time. Nobody moved or said anything, testing the confines of their new cage. I see. Lith flicked his finger and threw one of the awakened back in the pits of agony. You've mistaken my patience for mercy. You are wrong. I have no mercy for the likes of you, and my patience is already running thin. Answer me now, or I'll take your silence as a refusal to cooperate. The pained screams of the hapless awakened as his body melted like wax in the roaring sea of the pits, snapped the other awakened from their delusion. I'll talk, a man said first, throwing himself at Lith's feet with his mind link at the ready. The others formed an orderly line as they wondered whether those who went first would be allowed a respite, until Lith finished interrogating everyone, or would be thrown back into the pits immediately. The answer pleasantly surprised them. The awakened received a second serving of food, and so did all the others as soon as they had nothing more to reveal. Lith's face remained a stone mask the entire time, making it impossible to understand if he had learned enough to quell his thirst for revenge. Without that knowledge, most of the awakened felt compelled to reveal as much as they could to placate their captor. A few of them, however, kept the most valuable information for themselves to use as a bargaining chip. And with this, we are done for today. Only the final awakened received no food and was immediately tossed in the pits along with the others. I don't trust any of you. Maybe you've come clean with me and maybe not. I'll go check on your information, and if it turns out to be true, I'll move on to the next step of your sentence. If you've left out important details, however, or you have pointed me at people irrelevant to my investigation, I will make you pay. Chapter 43:19 No Maybe, Part 1. Enjoy your stay until the next time. Lith turned around and was about to walk away when he noticed that Solus hadn't moved from her spot. Is everything all right? Yes, she nodded as she sifted through everything they had just learned and witnessed. I've made up my mind about the bleed, Lith. I'm sorry, but I don't want to sacrifice these people for my convenience. They have already suffered too much for something they didn't even do. I know what they were planning, but there's no way to know whether they would have actually gone for it, or they would have realized how foolish making an enemy out of us was. I can't play judge, jury, and executioner based on a maybe. It's wrong. Sacrificing these people might save my life in the future, but at the price of my soul. If I do this, I would be no better than Thrud or all those crazy bastards who kill innocents to forge-master a cursed object. You don't have to explain yourself to me, Solus, Lith replied. I know we are different people, and I would never ask you to ignore your conscience and poison your peace of mind for me. No treasure would be worth that, let alone these scumbags. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Whatever happens, we'll find a way to survive like we always do. Thanks, she nodded, feeling a huge burden lifting from her chest. You have no idea how much your words mean to me. Also, you didn't let me finish. Solus' gaze steeled, and her hands closed into fists. I want that guy in the bleed. She pointed at the awakened that Lith had followed to the safe house. There is no maybe with that bastard. He wanted to kidnap the children. He was willing to kill Dad. The fact that he failed doesn't make his crimes any lighter. He knew what he was doing and had even prepared a hidden lab to experiment on our little ones with his accomplices. Killing him isn't enough. Burning his very life force to protect those he meant to hurt is the only fitting punishment for someone like him. Poetic justice, if you ask me, Lith nodded. What about the others? Kill them, please, she sighed. But only if what they have confessed is the truth and they didn't try to pull a fast one on us. Otherwise, feel free to leave them here to rot. Space. Lith and Solus spent the next few days following the leads they had received from their prisoners, increasing the number of inmates in the pits of agony quite a bit. We can't afford to slack off. If we don't take these bastards out ourselves and someone else does, we'll have to forge a master more blade weapons, Lith thought. Yeah, I'd be fine if it were for someone like Malishka or Firwal, but I don't trust the Awakened Council farther than we can throw them, Solus replied. There's no telling if they would use our blade weapons against us. I doubt they'd join the kidnappers' side, but too many people covet Mom's knowledge and your bloodline. I'm afraid that whenever our interests and those of our potential clients clash, they might use the weapon we gave them to tip the scales in their favor. You know, you have to find some way to clarify when you refer to Mom or Rifa. You call my father Dad, so when you say Mom, I think of my mother and get utterly confused since she possesses no knowledge that might interest an Awakened, Lith said. Sorry, she chuckled. Not sorry, Menadian grunted. I have 700 years of seniority on Alina, so Mom is my title. Mom, this is a private conversation. Solus blushed as they prepared to ambush the last batch of potential kidnappers of which they were aware. Get out of our mind link. Not a chance, she replied. I need to tell you that the other Citadel demons are in position. We are waiting for your signal and a little extra juice to start the attack. On my mark, Lith took a deep breath of invigoration, infusing the Citadel demons and his golems with the mana it produced. Mark. The combined attack of 3 divine beasts, 5 seven-eyed demons, 4 bright violet cord awakened, and 2 golems toppled the defensive arrays of the underground facility like a house of cards. Killing the awakened would have been easy, but dead men didn't fear Salark's pits of agony, nor could they be interrogated. Taking the prisoners alive before they could warp away was hard, requiring swift action and flawless teamwork. It was the reason Freya kept herself at a safe distance above the facility, and with the eyes of Menadian on her nose, ready to disrupt any dimensional spell. Lith's team caught the Awakened by surprise, and by the time they realized what was happening and who they were against, the Awakened had already been rendered unconscious and tied up like prime roast. This is it, Lith gave a nod to everyone for the job well done. I'll bring them to the desert and let them stew for a while before interrogating them. Until that moment, you're free to go back to your business. About that, remember my share of the equipment, Protector said. It will take a lot of adamant for a full set of armor for me, and every bit counts. Same, but take my share and deduct it from my debt, Tista sighed. What about our share? Moruk asked. If we don't let my father forge-master the equipment for our kids, you'll see a grown man cry, Quilla replied. We have no need for small change. Maybe that's true for you and me, but not for Ryla and Garrick, he pointed out. Don't forget that, aside from the books, the people of Zelex took all the treasures of my tyrant bloodline. I don't have much, and I don't like having to beg Orion to take care of my little brother. You don't need to beg my father, Quilla blushed a bit. Yet you are right, I don't want to keep relying on my parents' money for everything. Lith. I got it, he groaned. At this point, I'll set aside Nalrun's and Freya's share as well. Thanks, the Agni sighed. I have nothing aside from my share of your silver mines, and you can't buy adamant. I can't believe that someone who owns a mage tower with its own super-fast mine can be so stingy, Freya said. You should be the richest of us all, Lith. In a few centuries, maybe, he grunted. Right now, I only have a bunch of useless silver, and I need 2 full suits of armor ready before my children become of age and lose the Guardian's protection. The only silver lining is that Val is already covered. Thru did one thing right in her life. So you're not having more children for at least 15 years? Protector asked in disbelief. We don't talk about that, Lith stiffened. I can only say we won't have them for a while, at least until this twin curse is dispelled. Sounds like someone just jinxed himself for triplets. Locrias laughed, making Lith's wallet shudder at the idea. Chapter 4320 No Maybe, Part 2. I said we don't talk about that, Lith snarled. Get off my back, go do something useful that doesn't involve mocking me. Damn, that killed all my list of daily activities, Protector chuckled. See you later, then. The tower warp had already brought them back to the mansion, and Lith let his friends off before taking a short trip to the Blood Desert to drop his prisoners. I'm going to practice control over the scattered, cursed elements. Do you want to join me? I could use an extra set of eyes. Lith asked once they returned to Lucia for good. I wish. Now that the fusion reactor is at full capacity, I have to start hunting for adamant scraps with the watchtower, Solus groaned. I'll travel back to all the mana geysers we know and mine everything I can. The more adamant we have, the faster the crucible works. Even if we stumble into a divine beast's corpse or we kill one, it would be useless until we have enough metal to coat its skin and bones. You stay here and keep researching dread magic without me. Anyone can use the eyes to study your progress, and there's no point in wasting your time keeping me company. I'm not looking for a fight, and I don't expect trouble. Even if something unexpected happens, I have the tower, the engine, and you can instantly reach me as long as you stand on the mansion's mana geyser. Have fun, then, Lith shrugged. I wish. The next few days are going to be the longest of my life, she sighed. Solus thought about taking Valoran with her, but decided otherwise. Val has no affinity for the cursed elements just like me, but he'd miss his siblings, she thought. I can't even ask Tista to accompany me for a bit of sparring. I'm a terrible fighter in my divine beast form, but fighting inside would damage the tower. Fighting outside instead would throw discretion to the wind. We cause small quakes whenever we fight. Even a blind man would hear us from kilometers away. Mom is bound to Lith, so I'll have to settle for a good book as a travel companion. Solus sat on the command throne of the watchtower and set the coordinates for the Snake Mountain Range, in the ancient Odi ruins where Dawn had built her secret lab after escaping from the Razar's fringe. The place is uninhabited and in the middle of nowhere, she thought. According to Nalrond and the royal prospectors, it will be centuries before the mana crystal veins are viable, but maybe they have missed a very deep metal vein. Starforge used the mana injector to produce pulses of world energy that the ears used to locate the presence of magical resources, akin to a radar. Magical metals and crystals absorbed part of the world energy, and the rest would bounce back to the tower. The greater the depth, the longer a single scan took, and Solus took several scans before assessing whether the current site was a hit or miss. This is a miss, she sighed. I found lots of crystals, but we've got plenty of those. I'll mark their position for future reference. The following tower warp brought her near the Broken Spine Mountain, another site where she and Lith had spent a lot of time during his tour as a ranger. It's a hit, she clenched her first. A small hit, though. There isn't much adamant, and it's located very deep underground. The rest is silver and orichalcum. Solus confirmed the position and quantity of the magic metal, providing the tower with the instructions it needed to automate the process. It was then that the boredom began. Thanks to the ears, the eyes, and the tower core missing only a few layers of enchantments, identifying and locating the different kinds of enchanted metals took her just a few minutes. Extracting them, however, was a different story entirely. If the magical metals were deep in the ground, the mining operations would take hours. If they were deep and scattered all across the mana geyser's surroundings, it would take much longer. The tendrils produced by the tower had to move through the ground slowly, to avoid causing cave-ins that might bury the metal deeper or reveal Solus' presence. The process left no trace of the watchtower's interference, since the ground turned soft when a tendril passed, and hardened once it was gone. Also, the mining operations rarely required Solus' attention, but she couldn't get away from the tower in case an emergency arose. She had to endure long, tedious hours every time the watchtower found something, giving her successful hunts the taste of failure. Gods, this is so boring, she talked to herself to fight the loneliness. I'll revise the Void Magic textbook one more time. Let's see if there's something we could have done better. The idea was good, but the execution was quick. Solus had written the textbook herself and examined its contents many times. She knew it like the back of her hand and finished what would have taken a student hours of diligent reading in minutes. By the time the watchtower had completed mining the adamant from the first scrap mine, Solus had already revised 2/3 of the textbook. She completed her task, while the tower was still in the middle of extracting the magic metal from the next scrap mine she had found. Okay, now what? She sighed. It's too early for lunch, and the more metal I leave behind, the longer I will have to stay once I return here from home. Let's try something new. With no one to talk to and nothing to do, Solus decided to experiment with the watchtower. The automated collection system had already memorized the position of the adamant, so the watchtower just scouted the tower's surroundings for potential threats. Solus sat on the command throne and recalled the energy of the Menadian set and the watchtower, focusing them into a narrow beam of highly compressed world energy. She named it the beacon, and it allowed her to investigate areas hundreds of kilometers away from the tower as if she were there. The beacon's range matched the eyes of Menadians while fueled by the tower, showing everything in a straight line from Solus. Once she noticed something interesting, the beacon released pulses of world energy that the ears of Menadian used to investigate the local mana currents. "This is so exciting," Solus said as she discovered new and old dwellings on both the surface and under the ground. "Who knows, maybe I can find a lost treasure. Scratch that, I have no need for antiques. An ancient, hidden deposit of adamant would be so much better. Magical metals don't rust, and whatever protection is left to guard them should be either on the verge of crumbling or so outdated that we could crack it in our sleep. Come on, Watchtower, don't let me down. Mommy needs a new armor." Unfortunately for her, magical treasures didn't pile up out of the goodness of their non-existent hearts, and whoever took the trouble to do that didn't leave the fruits of their hard work up for grabs. Chapter 43:21 Treasure Hunt, Part 1. The only things Solus spotted were ancient ruins of priceless historical value, animal burrows, monster dens, and the lairs of the regional council lords. Even the beacon failed to penetrate the cloaking runes of the secret labs, and Solus had to avert her gaze quickly when she found them. The beacon wasn't even something Menadian had planned for. It was the result of Solus combining the multiple enchantments of the tower core. It was far from a subtle means of investigation, and its reach exceeded the veils. The surveillance arrays of the Awaken's lair perceived the sudden influx of world energy and recognized it for the intrusion it was. A prolonged exposure to the beacon would have triggered the alarms, and since the beam moved in a straight line, finding the tower would have been child's play. To make matters worse, the watchtower was blind and deaf when Solus used the beacon. Its sensory arrays were focused on the distance and wouldn't perceive a horde of divine beasts charging at its gates. Solus wasn't as paranoid as Lith, but after spending so many years together, he lived in her head rent-free. Literally. What if someone stumbles in the tower while you play Solus the Explorer? A little voice that sounded like Lith said in her head whenever she used the beacon for more than 10 seconds. What if your new hobby ruins our years of hard work? Do you really think that if you say, "But I was really bored," our enemies will take pity on you and pretend to have never discovered the tower's existence? Solus hated it when her inner Lith treated her like a child, but she hated it more when the voice in her head made a reasonable observation. After emitting 10 pulses of world energy through the beacon, Solus restored the watchtower standard operations for 5 pulses before resuming her explorations. The first pulse was a deep sweep. The second was to check for abnormalities in the world energy flows created by a powerful cloaking object, and the last 3 to shut up whatever crazy make-believe scheme Solus Innerlith came up with. "Is mining adamant that exhausting, sweetie?" Alina asked after the end of the meal away from prying ears. "You look terrible." "No, Mom, it's just mind-numbing boring," Solus groaned. "Having Lith talking my ears off with his nagging makes it much worse, though." "Lith," Alina echoed in surprise. "He's been here all day. Did he develop a bloodline ability that allows him to be in 2 places at the same time?" No, Mom." Solus shook her head. "I just keep hearing him in my head every time I do something he would consider reckless or stupid." "Did you do something reckless or stupid while you were out there alone, young lady?" Alina scowled at Solus, tapping her foot in annoyance. "Did you put yourself in danger just to relieve your boredom?" "No, Mom, I swear." Solus realized her mistake only when it was too late. "I've been a responsible adult." "She's lying." Menadian appeared out of thin air. "I've just checked the tower's recordings. She went poking and prodding her nose where it doesn't belong." "Solus Elfin Althena Menadian, I expected better from you," the 2 women said as one. "Not only did you endanger yourself with your reckless behavior, but you also had the gall to lie to my face. I'm really disappointed in you." That was one of the rare situations when Menadian didn't mind the competition. Having an ally to grill, her daughter prevented Solus from using arguments that would work only on Menadian. "It's not what it looks like, Moms. I can explain." Solus was cornered and desperately looked for a way out. "Really?" Alina snorted. "Then explain it to her." She warped Elijah in her arms and shoved the baby girl in Solus' face. "Massa?" Elijah asked in confusion. "Yes, Massa." Menadian spoke every word like an accusation. "Tell her what you did. We are all listening." "I'm sorry." Solus burst into tears, incapable of lying to Elijah's loving eyes. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken so many risks. I'll be careful in the future, just make it stop. The baby girl had yet to say or do anything, but her presence had on soulless, guilty conscience the same effect as sunlight on an undead. It froze them in place and turned them into ashes. Remember those words? Elena handed the baby girl to Solus. Because we will. It's not just your life at stake. If something were to happen to you, our entire family would be destroyed by the loss. Space. How did the mining operations go, and why are you covered in babies? Lith asked as he examined Solus' sorry figure. Vanadian had given Surin, Raldorak, and Valoran as well to her daughter, making the message so loud and clear that Solus would hear it for the rest of her life. The search for adamant wasn't great, but I've found several kilos of it already, which is way more than we had until this morning. Solus sighed, shrouding the babies with hair blankets and lulling them into sleep. Before answering your second question, please promise me you won't get mad. I've already gotten the scolding of a lifetime, and I can't endure more. Lith nodded, and Solus shared everything with a mind link. The mini-me was right, Solus, Lith pondered. You've taken a significant risk, yet your experiment carried an impressive result. The beacon is a powerful tool, and when you move to Giera's geysers, it might help us find Meln. Are you not going to stop me from using the beacon? Solus was flabbergasted. Absolutely not, he shook his head. You did the right thing for the wrong reason. Be careful and always take full and deep sweeps of the area before activating the beacon. Also, lower its output the moment it meets resistance. There is no problem in scanning an empty area, but if you bump into arrays, you might trigger them and expose your presence. When that happens, take a step back, wait a few minutes, and then move close enough to examine them without being discovered. You had a great idea, Solus. The underground is vast, and there is no telling how many paranoid awakened have hidden their resources and been killed before they could use them back, when dimensional amulets didn't exist. I know, Solus nodded. Also, I have been careful. I had no interest in the regional lords' lairs. Attacking them would expose the tower and make an enemy out of the entire Garland Council. Agreed, Lith replied. Focus on weak or old magical formations without an owner. If there is still an imprint, we might step into a hornet's nest. We already have too much on our plate and too many enemies. Let's not add more. Space. Before resuming her travels across Magur in search of adamant, Vanadian and Lith helped Solus develop a security protocol for the beacon. Start by changing up a tower warp and use it to move away the moment something feels off. There's no better cloaking rune than not being there when someone comes looking for you, Vanadian said. Chapter 4322 Treasure Hunt Part 2. The veil also erases all traces of the tower presence, so even if someone comes checking on the geyser, they won't find anything. Even someone as paranoid as Lith would think it was just a wild surge of world energy. Thanks, Mom, I will, Solus nodded. Only a few geysers held magical resources, but she took a cursory sweep of the area with the beacon, even when there was nothing to mine with the watchtower. Most of the time, Solus found only things that would make an archaeologist's day. On a few occasions, she encountered what she was almost certain had been ancient ore deposits. They were located not too deep in the ground, and were surrounded by decrepit cloaking and earth-sealing arrays. Yet what truly gave their original purpose out was the presence of massive enchanted doors guarding the deposit's only entrance. They were made of simple silver, and no worthwhile gemstone was embossed on their surface. After all, there was no point in building a door more valuable than the contents of the vault itself. Most of these deposits are centuries, if not millennia old. The beacon couldn't examine things like dust deposits, but Solus had a deep understanding of runes and could identify how long each magical formation dated back based on the runes they employed. It's no surprise they have been found and raided already, she inwardly sighed. When the doors haven't been touched, you know it was an inside job. When the doors have been ripped off their hinges instead, it has to be a lucky explorer. Solus had no idea that more than once she had witnessed Joral's handiwork. The Storm Griffin had used Life Maelstrom to overload the ancient arrays and brute strength to open the vault's gates. He had no idea how to read runes that old, and any mistake would have triggered a cave-in, burying the adamant under hundreds of tons of rock. Joral solved the issue by making the focus points of the arrays implode with Life Maelstrom. No matter how ancient, all magical formations were based on the same principles, and identifying the key nodes of outdated enchantments was easy. What once had been considered a secret of a Master Warden's trade was now so trivial that children of any decent magical bloodline learned it from a tender age. Jorel was responsible only for a small number of empty deposits. The rest, he was either unaware of their existence, or they were already empty when he had found them. His energy signature had already faded days before Solus had even started looking for Adamant herself. There was no way to tell how long ago a vault had been breached unless one went there in person, and Solus had no reason to do that. The deposits were located past the range of the warp mirror, and just going back and forth from all of them would have taken too long for no gain. Solus had yet to find enough adamant to cover the toes of 1 foot of her divine beast form when she ran out of known mana geysers in the kingdom and moved to Giera. Damn it, Mom must have pillaged most of the scrap mines back in her day, Solus sighed. To make matters worse, I have imprinted only a few geysers in the Empire and can't use those in the desert. When I asked Grandma for mining rights, I could almost feel her glare boring a hole in my skull and set my body ablaze. Maybe I should have started in Verendi, but I can't forget what Lith said. If I find Meln's hideout, we can get rid of him once and for all. Solus was particularly cautious, afraid of triggering Knight's defenses or being spotted by her steed, Moonlight. Once she reached Giera, there was no such thing as a cursory examination. Solus thoroughly scoured the ground both above and below, hoping to find signs of Upper's energy signatures. It was the reason she didn't miss an underground complex at the fringes of the beacon's range. It was too far away to take a decent look at it, even after narrowing the watchtower's area of effect further. I can't believe it. The arrays are several millennia old, yet they are still in perfect condition. Even from that distance, Solus perceived a regular flow of unimprinted world energy. Whoever built this place must have been as rich as they were talented. This is worth taking a closer look. Solus left the tower in place, and the tower warp charged before opening a dimensional corridor as close as the warp mirror could to the complex. Alone in a foreign land, and in the middle of the Beast Empire, she needed to be swift. Even if she shapeshifted her features to avoid being recognized, the members of the local council would detain and interrogate her the moment she refused to identify herself by showing her council amulet. After the breakout of the plague, most of Giera had become a no-man's land, and the colonization parties from Garland had exacerbated the relationship between the two continents. The presence of an unknown awakened traveling alone in the middle of nowhere was bound to raise suspicions, and Solus couldn't let anyone so much as glimpse at her life force. She moved as quickly as the wind, using the eyes to lock on the farthest dimensional coordinates available, and the mouth to always have warps and blinks at the ready. Solus stopped at the first patch of trees she found after getting close enough to the underground facility to examine it with the eyes. The arrays are old but functional just as the beacon sensed. Let's see what's inside. Solus expanded the eye's sensory range, filtering out everything she had already observed as soon as the headache caused by the artifact became unbearable. There are constructs and lots of them. How can they still be functional after all this time? She thought as the eyes scanned deeper. This place looks like a poor man's Stonewall fortress. Or rather, it would be on par with the undead's underground castle if it had been built with modern magic. Still, there are enough arrays and powerful sources of mana I can't identify to make this place dangerous. For a moment, Solus feared that she had found another Odie outpost and that she would have faced the horrors of Killer again. Then, the eyes completed their scan and found no living being, undead, or anything in between in the complex. By my mom. Even better, the artifact pinpointed 2 massive surges of world energy corresponding respectively to a significant mass of adamant and another just as big of mana crystals. The powerful arrays that protect the vaults create too much white noise for the eyes to get an accurate estimate of the quantity of metals and crystals stored behind those walls, but I can tell it's a lot. Probably enough to get myself a full adamant armor big enough to cover me once I reach the bright violet, and replace all the lesser crystals in the tower mines with violet ones. I'm going to need those too to fuel the enchantments of equipment of that size. Afraid to have jinxed her good luck, Solus shook her head and returned to the tower as fast as she could. Chapter 4323 Odd Device, Part 1. Solus returned to the mansion immediately, waiting only the time necessary to scan the mana geyser's surroundings and ensure that no one had approached the tower while she studied the underground complex. It took her a few calls and a bit of caution to summon everyone in the keep without alerting Gianni. Guys, I have great news, Solus said, sharing her discovery via mind link. It seems you have struck the mother lode, Solus, Protector said. How much is my cut if I help you crack that vault open like an egg? Your share, Solus echoed, suddenly remembering that she wasn't the only one in dire need of adamant. How can you be so greedy, Protector? Tista clicked her tongue in disapproval. Solus is our friend and needs our help. She can have my share, as long as she deducts it from my debt, of course. Solus looked daggers at her friend, failing to find any difference between the two claims. I'm sorry, but I want a share as well. Morok raised his hands apologetically. Just give me enough adamant for an adult-sized armor for Ryla and Garrick, and we're even. I'll make weapons for them with the next loot. Same for me, Nalrun nodded. The discovery is yours, and so is the tower, so I'm okay with a small cut. As long as I can refine it in the crucible, thank you very much. Freya and Quilla remained silent, knowing that their father or Falwell would take care of everything they might need. You guys are unbelievable, Solus snarled. I never thought the day would come when I'd be happy to be a midget, but you made it possible. And yes, I admit I'm short. Does anyone have anything more to say? Yes, Lith nodded, almost making her jaw drop to the floor. Show everything to me again, please. Start from the beginning. Solus recalled her memories of the underground complex, this time more slowly and in much greater detail. Something smells fishy here, Lith pondered. Old arrays of that size require a much stricter maintenance schedule than modern ones, yet they are still in perfect working condition. That's a good point. Solus fought to keep the adrenaline rush that was clouding her mind since earlier under control. I'm certain there is no living being down there, only inorganic constructs. Yet taking care of so many arrays for millennia isn't something a normal golem can do. The pseudo-cores of these constructs must be incredibly complex. That's not all, Quilla pointed out. As you showed us, the place isn't built over a mana geyser, and those are permanent arrays like those of House Urnas. Fueling them requires a lot of power, even more when the facility is under attack. What if the crystal vault you spotted is no vault at all, but just an energy source storage? What's the difference? Solus asked. If that's a storage like Quilla says, then that place is packed with weapons that at the time were considered powerful, Menadian replied. That's way too many crystals to fuel only a bunch of magical formations, no matter how powerful. The others must be for artifacts kept at the ready in stasis fields. Once their master is dead, constructs can endure the passing of time thanks to their recharge pods, but from that moment, they can only use non-imprinted tools. At the same time, however, without a mage providing them with mana, those very tools would lose their pseudo-cores in a few years. How could I have been so blind? Solus' eyes went wide in disbelief. Arrays, constructs, artifacts, everything there is fueled by mana crystals. Quilla is right, that's no vault, it's an armory. It's your first brush with dragon greed, Solus. You'll get used to it, Lith replied. Moreover, the crystal storage's size says a lot about the kind of firepower the fortress will unleash at us when we breach its walls. We need to prepare carefully. Please don't count on me for the execution of the plan. Freya cleared her throat, drawing all eyes on her. I won't endanger my twins for a bit of adamant. I'm going to sit this out. I'm coming instead, Quilla said. Dipping my toes with old junk is the perfect practice before stepping out on a real battlefield. I have no objections, but aren't you taking this a bit too seriously? Morok asked. The place is decrepit, and we have Menadian and her set on our side. What are the chances we can't just crack the arrays and waltz our way in? Not many, but you were in Killa with us, Morok, Solus replied. You know that ancient doesn't always equal harmless. Moreover, the eyes of Menadian spotted an entire army of battle golems. Gods, I still have nightmares about those things, the tyrant shuddered. Didn't you say there is nothing organic inside the city? I did, but that doesn't reassure me much, Solus replied. The arrays surrounding the underground facility created too much interference to get a proper scan of the active golems, let alone of those depowered. I don't know if this lost civilization is more or less advanced than the Odi, but I wouldn't underestimate them. There was no broken construct, malfunctioning array, or ruined building despite the passing of at least 5 millennia. The only plausible explanation is that there are constructs specialized in repairs and maintenance. Imagine mowing down dozens of golems just to see them get back on their feet as good as new. Think what might happen if we deactivate the arrays, walk in, and then a maintenance golem turns them on again. We'd be trapped and surrounded by enemies. 10-0-0. That doesn't sound good, at all, Morok pondered. And the worst part is that whoever built that armory knew enough about magic to not need a mana geyser for their workings. They must have been much more skilled and less arrogant than the Odi. I'm glad we are on the same page, Solus nodded. Be sure to prepare everything you think we might need before we go. Also, we have to inform our parents of our absence. Thank the gods that for once we don't have to lie too much. Space. An adamant deposit? Gianni asked. How did you find it? I did a long time ago, Menadian replied. I never bothered exploring it because it was too dangerous, and I could earn all the resources I wanted with my forge-mastering skills. Dangerous, with a mage tower at your disposal? Gianni didn't sound convinced. Mage towers are not omnipotent, or I wouldn't have passed away so soon, Menadian countered soberly. They have limits that I'm not going to reveal to you, Gianni. One day, I hope to gift Solus a modern version of my tower. I won't ask any more questions about it then. Gianni raised her hands in apology. Is the adamant enough for a full set of equipment for a divine beast? I'm not sure, Riffa replied, and this time she was telling the truth. I didn't tell Solus about the deposit before because she had no need for it, but now things are different. I won't let my only heir risk her life when I could have helped her. Since we are already at it, don't you Urnas have a dragon corpse or something? Chapter 4324 Odd Device, Part 2. Your family is ancient, and we could use a framework for the armor if the adamant is insufficient. I'm sorry, but despite what the legends say, my ancestors didn't spend their days slaying monsters and rescuing princesses, Orion replied. Fighting a divine beast is rare, and surviving the encounter is even rarer. To kill one without the support of a city's arrays takes luck and a small army. Even if the Urnas have killed one or more divine beasts over the centuries, the royals must have taken the spoils. All I have stored in my family's armory is a few human-sized armor made of dragon scales, but they are outdated. And way too small for Solus anyway, Menadian sighed. Where the hell is an evil titan bent on conquering the world when you need one? If they have heard about Lith, they are probably hiding, Gianni replied. After Siruk, Zedros, and the War of the Griffins, anyone with half a brain knows how their rampage would end. She didn't mention Thrud, Jormung, and their generals in respect for Valoran II. Gianni hated the Mad Queen's guts and always would, but she harbored no ill will towards the kind boy who was trying to teach Driffa how to speak. You don't have to worry about our parents, Freya said. I'll stay here, and from this distance, Master Falwell and Gungnir can arrive in a heartbeat. Also, with the babies here, I doubt anyone will be crazy enough to try something funny. Ya mi song, Elijah nodded. Maro. She traced a wavy, jagged line, and released a bolt of corruption out of the nearest window. Aside from Elijah, of course, Freya cleared her throat. The good news is that I've learned the rune for the cursed earth element, Malker, Lith said, after asking a few things to Elijah via the dragon scales. The bad news is that now I have one more thing to do when I get back. Space. Lith and the others left the mansion before sunrise, as soon as the full night's sleep reset the effects of invigoration. A tower warp brought them to the Mana Geyser in Giera, and from there, they studied the shortest and safest route to the underground complex with the beacon. Nalrun can pull us out in case of emergency, but I'd rather not risk triggering an alarm, Lith said. Also, any trap or writing we encounter on our way to the armory could help us uncover the identity of our enemy. I've brought many books on the topic of ancient civilizations with me, Quilla nodded. As long as the kingdom has already encountered one such ruin, I can tell you who we are dealing with. The warp mirror covered 1/3 of the distance from the nearest entrance, and from that point, they took turns opening warp steps until they reached their destination. The eyes of Menadian allowed even non-demons to lock on dimensional coordinates dozens of kilometers away, and open the longest dimensional corridors that a bright violet core could fuel. It was after the 3rd steps that Lith noticed that Nalrund held a small device in his hand. It was a small silver sphere covered in red dimensional runes that Lith would have mistaken for a home stone, if not for the several small violet crystals studded on its surface. I thought Freya had made no progress with crafting dimensional crystals, he said. She hasn't. Nalrund pressed one of the gemstones until it clicked. In case you are wondering, this is what you'd call insurance. Insurance against what? And more importantly, where did you get it? Lith asked after the eyes failed to so much as glimpse past the cloaking runes of the artifact, and the Agni promptly stored it back into his dimensional amulet. I don't pry into your family's secrets, Lith, Nalrund said. All I'm asking you is to return me the favor. Can that be Orion's doing? Solus asked via their mind link once the Agni turned his back on Lith. There's little royal forgemasters can't do, but if he knows the secret of violet crystals, why didn't he share it with Freya? Conflict of interests. Lith replied. Just as Freya won't add the secrets of the Hydra bloodline to the Erna's bloodline legacy, Orion can't teach Freya anything that Falul might through their Harbinger Master bond. Moreover, Orion is no dimensional mage. If he's the one who gave that thing to Nalrund, he must have commissioned it from a fellow royal Forgemaster. Orion is likely not to know how to craft violet crystals either. Even if he did, we know how loyal to the kingdom he is. Unless the lives of his family members are at stake and he has no other choice, he won't betray his oath, no matter the consequences. Finally, it's my time to shine, Tista said. Or rather, the mouth of Menadian's time to shine. I've stored our best array sensing and life sensing arrays in it. I'll scan the area around us while we walk, saving us a lot of time and mana. Excellent idea, Tista, Solus replied. I'll use the eyes and ears only if you spot something unusual. Speaking of excellent ideas, what about reforging the mouth, Rifa? Tista said. Its magic is outdated, and maybe you could add a few offensive abilities. Since when is casting arrays and spells not an offensive ability? The first ruler of the flames snorted. The mouth is perfect as it is, but I'll update the runes for you. I won't let my masterpiece be overshadowed by the Maw of Baitra. Not only did that runt copy and improve on my work, but she even dared to make multiple copies of it. Shameless. Just shameless. I hoped you'd do it because we're family now, not to satisfy your ego and competitive spirit, Tista replied. Still, I won't look the gifted horse in the mouth, so thank you. You are welcome, Menadian replied. The underground network of tunnels formed a maze, and an artificial one at that. Many corridors had a perfect circular shape, and even though no one had treaded them for millennia, they were too smooth to be natural. Someone tried really hard to hide the correct path. Soulless eidetic memory allowed her to follow the most direct route without ever losing her way. If one follows the natural caves, they'll never reach the complex. If they follow the artificial tunnels instead, the only thing they'll find is a dead end. You must alternate between natural and artificial passages at the right turn to find your way. Make one mistake, and you'll run in circles forever. Then why have we yet to find anything? Quilla asked. I'm checking for arrays and traps every 30 steps, Tista replied. I'm not saying anything because I have nothing to report. Let me try something. Nalrund made the weird home stone click, and then tapped on the rock wall nearby with one of his claws. He tapped again whenever he saw the mana crystals on Tista's mouth lit up, and a few minutes later, he signaled the group to stop. There's something here and there. He pointed at the ground in front of them and at the right wall, encompassing a large area with his finger. Chapter 43-25, The Invincible King, Part 1. Did you find something with Earth Vision? Tista repeated the scan, but none of the spells stored in the mouth detected magical signatures. Yeah, I didn't touch anything in case they are connected to a silent alarm. Nalrund also checked around with life and fire vision, but aside from his companions, there was nothing to see. What you sensed on the wall are the remnants of an array, Solus said after checking it with the eyes. An ancient array physically carved in the rock. It's inactive for so long that the erosion of the stone has made most of the runes unreadable. And the one on the floor is a spike pit. Protector checked on it from a safe distance with invigoration. The blades inside are made of normal metal and so rusted that a breeze is enough to turn them into dust. How did whoever built this place expect to kill anyone with that junk? Tista scoffed. Most likely with poison, Quilla replied. Also, I bet that triggering the trap would have activated the dormant and until that moment undetectable array, which in turn would have caused a cave-in and sounded an alarm. Even if you survived the collapse of the ceiling, the constructs would have rushed here to finish you off. As they approached the underground facility, they found more elaborate, powerful traps that combined magic with mechanical devices. Yet the ravages of time had turned runes into scratches and clockwork gears into moss patches. I suspect that our late host knew about Awakened and didn't want them here, Lith said. It's the only reason to keep the arrays inactive and rely on mechanical traps. Life vision can spot neither, taking away an Awakened's greatest advantage. That or maybe they knew they were about to die and wanted the arrays to last, Solus replied. In their inactive state, magical formations can work for a long time even after the imprint of their maker disappears. I have a few theories about this place, but it's too soon to tell. Let's go deeper and see if we find something else. Nalrund shapeshifted into his Agni form and Morok into its real body, that of a tyrant 3.5 meters, 116. Tall, covered in prismatic scales, with reverse V-shaped bone protuberances on his back and reverse-jointed legs. They both possessed the ability to perceive the elemental imbalance produced by arrays, be they active or not, by detecting the fluctuations in the world energy they produced. Away from a mana geyser, and with nothing to interfere with their mystical senses, the two men were confident to spot hidden compartments and spells, no matter how well they had been cloaked. Yet only Nalron's earth vision spotted something as they moved deeper, and what he found confirmed what they already knew. There were many traps along the way to the underground facility, but most were mechanical. As the group got closer to their destination, the trapdoors became larger, and the spike pits they covered became deeper. Time and lack of maintenance had jammed the delicate mechanisms, sealing the trapdoors so well that only a powerful earth magic spell could pry them apart. Quilla examined the few still readable runes of the various deactivated arrays they encountered, jotting them down and looking for a match in her books. "I think I got something." They had entered the warren of tunnels for less than an hour, but thanks to the mouth and Nalron's earth vision, they had already covered half the distance. "There is no record of this place, but I identified these spells. They date back to about 6,000 years ago, and were developed during the reign of Zarkar-Teneb, also known as the Invincible King." The Who, Solus switched all the tomes inside Saluspedia with the history books in her possession, but found no mention of such a person. "Your run-of-the-mill conqueror turned tyrant as soon as he got rid of his competition," Quilla shrugged. "The only two noteworthy things about Teneb are his meteoric rise that gave birth to several legends, and his unmatched skill as a general. Even after he was killed, his enemies honored him by passing down in their chronicles that the Invincible King had never been defeated." "I'm sorry, but you lost me." Tista tilted her head in confusion. "How could this guy be killed without being defeated first?" "Teneb was undefeated as a general, not as a warrior." Quilla shook her head. "His enemies lured him into an ambush alone with his honor guard and slaughtered him with overwhelming numbers." "That's a cowardly move if I ever heard one, but at least it's better than being poisoned." Lith nodded. "What about the legends surrounding the Invincible King?" "Again, nothing special. Zarkar-Teneb was a nameless farmer who, after angering a petty local noble, was forced to escape to avoid persecution. A few years later, he returned as a powerful mage, conquered his old village, slayed the noble, and from there he built his empire." "And you call this nothing special?" Morok furrowed his many brows. "This Teneb guy might as well be the first king's ancestor. How is he any worse than Valoran?" "Easy. Teneb was cruel, oppressed the people of the countries he invaded, and had no qualms about turning those who displeased him into slaves," Quilla replied. "He used forced labor to strip the newly conquered lands of their magical resources and amassed them in his capital." "I stand corrected. The Invincible King is nothing like Valoran the First," the tyrant retched. "How long did his rule last?" "Guys like that never last long," she shrugged. "After about 20 years and stockpiling enough treasures to rival the current royal vaults, the Invincible King was betrayed by his vassals. Teneb was, after all, invincible as long as he stood at the head of an army, so his enemies within his court and the rebel forces joined hands. The nobles wanted to get rid of the Invincible King and steal his treasures, while the rebels wanted freedom. During the parade to celebrate the 21st year of his rule, the local militia turned against him, and the adoring crowd revealed itself to be the rebel army in disguise. You can imagine the rest. The funny part is what happened after the Invincible King died. The nobles hadn't considered that letting inside the city walls an army of angry people, and locking out of the capital the loyal soldiers wasn't such a good idea. After the Invincible King was dead, the rebels stormed the castle. The nobles retreated inside the imprintless royal chambers, hoping to find and use Teneb's war artifacts to defend themselves. Imagine their surprise when they found the armory and even the treasury empty. The nobles were slaughtered that same day, and the Invincible King's empire crumbled in a matter of months. "How can you be so sure that the nobles didn't find anything useful?" Lith asked. "Because after its victory, the rebel alliance fell apart as well, and the soldiers assembled by the various factions returned to their respective countries. All of them left behind a separate retelling of the story, and they all cursed the Invincible King for robbing them. The former members of the rebel army never recovered a single monocrystal or nugget of silver that was stolen from their lands.